Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of Anime Brain Freeze. We are your war-torn hosts.
I am John.
And I'm CC. When there's just too much cool anime to watch, we've got you covered. My god, this episode is full of spoilers!
Oh no, oh no.
And why is that? Because today we will talk about two follow-up seasons to series we have already reviewed. First, I will return to the Stone World post-apocalypse and discuss the cross between shonen action and love letter to science, Dr. Stone, Stone Wars. And after that, we will start wrapping things up with Attack on Titan's final season. Not quite yet, as it turns out, but regardless, there's lots to talk about. So abandon hate and try to break the cycle of violence and revenge. And most definitely, don't pause the pod. We'll be right back. Well, we sadly can't get to our reviews quite yet because we have to do an impromptu improvised news segment on this episode, and it's for the same reason that I think our last 2 or 3 news segments have been. I think that's the only reason we do news anymore these days, because we don't really talk about announcements or anything. But yeah, Kentaro Miura, the author of Berserk, passed away on May 6th. Was only 54 years old. I think he died from an aorta dissection.
Yeah, acute aortic dissection, I think, was the official cause of death.
Yeah, right. Which I wasn't even aware that was a thing. So,
yeah, me neither. I looked it up afterward to see what that actually was, and oh my god.
Yeah, it sounds
horrible.
Been
in so much pain.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me know that exists. One more thing to worry about, but it's horrible. First of all, deepest condolences to his friends and family. This is a tragedy for more than one reason. Yeah, for people who don't really know who Kentaro Miura is, he, like I said, is the author of Berserk, a very famous manga, dark fantasy manga. He has been drawing that series since 1989, well, technically since 1988 when he released a one-shot. But it was serialized in Hakusensha's monthly Animal House magazine in 1989. And the series continued in Young Animal magazine until now. It has over 40 million copies in circulation at this point. I don't know if that is all territories. Probably just Japan, really. I'm not sure. So basically, Miura has been working on this magnum opus of his since he was 22, which in itself, sticking that long with a single series is an achievement. Some people might disagree for certain reasons, we'll get to that, but I think it is. And stats-wise, just to name something else in terms of how big Berserk kind of was. In the US, it was published by Dark Horse. Some people have stated that Berserk was their biggest series, which is ridiculous because it had also stuff like Hellboy, for example, which is a very, very popular comic book. And Berserk outsold even that. And
wow, that's
yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's a big ass series. Miura has done some other stuff. King of Wolves or Oro with famed Fist of the North Star writer Bronson in 1989. That story was later continued in 1990, and Miura and Bronson collaborated again for other stuff. And recently in 2013, Miura launched a miniseries called Gigantomaxia in Young Animal. I haven't checked that out, but he also did that. And even more recently, he created and produced the Duranki manga with his studio Gaga in the inaugural issue of Hakusensha's Young Animal Zero magazine in September 2019. And yeah, so big body of work, not that many series, I guess, but a lot of mangaka stick with a couple of series, and he has one of the biggest ones, so that's not unusual, I would say. There has been a big outpour from colleagues, mutuals, fans, and professionals working in the medium and outside of it all over the web. A lot of them echoing each other in terms of how much influence Berserk was on their work and on media in general. Like, there would be no Dark Souls without Berserk. There would be no Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. There wouldn't be a Castlevania Netflix series in its current form because, as stated by its creators, they drew heavily from Berserk's imagery. Hell, a lot of Game of Thrones probably would have looked very differently if it wasn't for Miura's series and artwork. Berserk was ground zero for a lot of dark fantasy imagery, tropes, and archetypes that have become so very common in recent years. And judging from what his colleagues said, he was just one of the nicest guys as well, which I cannot confirm. I only know the guy through his art. I don't know anything about his personal life, so I have to believe what they are saying, but it sounds like he was a very joyful guy, a kid at heart, and had always a big smile on his face. And that sounds nice. It sounds like a good dude. And yeah, on a personal note, as you might be well aware if you have been following this podcast for a while, Berserk is my favorite manga and was the first manga series that I actively followed besides Dragon Ball. It's the only manga series I still have in physical form on my shelf, some first editions even, since I was always more of an anime guy anyway. But this is one of those series where I prefer the source material over every single one of its adaptations, mostly because so far the series didn't get the full high-budget top anime studio treatment it deserves. The 1997 series was a good retelling of the Golden Age arc, but had very basic animation. And the less said about the new movies, and especially the new TV series, the better. I mean, I have reviewed both seasons of that, and my words were not kind. I think this was a downright travesty and betrayal of not in terms of writing and everything. The writing is solid in the series, but the production values ruined that adaptation.
I mean, I know you didn't like the new TV series, but I thought you kind of liked the movies, I thought, or am I wrong?
Yeah, partially. I liked parts of the movies. I liked them when they were hand-drawn. I thought Studio 4C did a fantastic job when those movies were hand-drawn. Problem is they weren't a lot of the time. Like, the CG was definitely better than in the TV series, don't get me wrong, but it was still CG. And I don't want to see fucking Berserk movies or series in CG. I want to see it hand-drawn. I want it seen done by capable people at MAPPA, at Bones, people like that, people who know what they're fucking doing and who know how to, or Studio Wit even. I would say Studio Wit would probably have been the perfect choice considering their adaptation of Vinland Saga, which is that team behind a Berserk show. I would lose my shit. I would lose my fucking shit. So, that might still happen in 10 years or something when they try to do it again, and they probably will. But so far, the best Berserk thing we got in anime form was the 1997 series, in my opinion. Even that was toned down. That was severely, like, they reduced the gore a lot, and some characters were cut out, and it was shortened a bit here and there, and they just focused on that one central arc that they then redid in the movies, and then not necessarily better actually, and then the TV series tried to finally continue the story and get into more deep into other manga material, but how that turned out. So so that's a problem, and I'm still waiting for that good anime adaptation. But yeah, the manga is fantastic. One of the things I love the most about following that series for so long, I must have started reading it around the late 90s maybe, is to see Miura getting better and better at his craft with every new volume, with every new chapter, with every new page, with every new panel. Looking at the first and most current volume back to back, his progress and improvement are mind-blowing. It's ridiculous. It's just like it's night and day. And I so appreciate that he was willing and capable to constantly improve himself and make his art better and better and better and better. And yeah, by the later, or let's see, even at the middle part, probably let's say second quarter or something, his art is already so good, and then it just gets better from there on out, and it gets so detailed and crazy. And a lot of the stuff in his final chapters, especially starting after big arc wraps up, is just basically painting after painting after painting on 2-page spreads, and you're just wondering, how did you even do this? How did you do this on such a consistent basis? And wow, just fucking wow. I love Miura's artwork. I think it has to be seen to be believed in a lot of parts. I'm sad that we will never get to see the complete vision for Miura's story done by him. Yes, others might pick up the mantle. For example, Phoenix was finished after Osamu Tezuka died. But I can't see anyone coming even close to drawing the series with as much passion, talent, and exquisite detail bursting from every panel as Miura did. And not just that, Miura is a fantastic character writer and storyteller. All the characters in Berserk are so well written and realized, they jump off the page, especially our main man Guts. And that series has so many deeply emotional story beats of traumatized people just throwing themselves against the wall of pure darkness until they overcome it or die trying. And in my opinion, it's a profound story about friendship, love, hate, regret, the loss and retrieval of trust. I don't know if anyone is able to bring across the heart Miura imbued his character's story and world with, and I'm not sure I want to even see someone attempt it. Yes, Miura maybe left some outlines for how he wants the series to end. He has stated before that after telling such a grim story for most of its runtime, he wants his characters to have a happy ending, which I really appreciate because I wanted that too. But if the story is not ended with the same care as he spent the last 32 years putting into it, it might feel hollow, and that might ultimately hurt more than having it not end at all. He put his heart and soul into this series, and it shows. So at the moment, I'm not saying that doesn't change, but at the moment I say let this forever be his singular vision, true and untempered. I haven't read the newest chapters yet because I was waiting for the new collected volume to come out in Germany, which it hasn't happened yet. I wonder if they're then going to do a shortened volume or something, or if it will come out at all. But I've heard that some of the long dangling plot and character threads have come to somewhat of a resolution. I haven't spoiled myself, but I'm pretty sure I know what those people who have read it are talking about. And it seems like there's, like I said, at least a bit of resolution and catharsis in there. Yes, the big bads are not beaten, and we didn't see our hero and the love of his life ride happily into the sunset, but hey, do we ever in real life? So I guess that fits. And yeah, it's no secret that Miura, especially in recent years, took a lot of breaks from drawing Berserk. That's why it took such a long time to continue the story. Probably not only because he wanted to play Idolmaster, which has become a sad meme that I also participated in and currently I'm very ashamed of. There was also this meme that the characters still haven't gotten off the boat because some of his later chapters, he put the characters on a journey over the sea and that they were stuck there a long time because he took several breaks. I don't know, even if it was the case that he only did that to play his favorite game, who gives a shit? Let artists work at their goddamn own pace.
Yeah.
I don't know if Miura actually had serious health problems and took time off because of that as well, but there are enough manga creators who are way overworked and don't get to take care of themselves properly.
Togashi comes to mind.
Yeah, Togashi from Hunter x Hunter and Yu Yu Hakusho comes to mind, who has severe back problems and doesn't really get to recover properly, and he has gone on hiatus for that very often as well. And there's so many more out there that just do so much work. I won't say torture himself because of a lot of them just love what they're doing. If you look at Eiichiro Oda, for example, he just lives and breathes his job. And he loves the characters he created and he loves his fans and everything. And I admire that. I think that's fantastic. But also, please take care of yourself, people. And if a company is out there, and that has become more and more apparent even in the anime landscape than in the manga landscape, maybe, I don't know. But we've seen some reports coming out of that, just people just getting completely overworked and the schedule and deadlines being this most ridiculous shit. They have been for a long time in the anime medium, but still it gets more and more ridiculous and we get more and more serious each season. And it's stupefying. And this is not a good thing. Like I said, I'm not saying that Miura suffered from that experience as well, and that is the reason why he died. I'm not saying that as far as I can tell, the reason he died was something that can happen to anyone with a certain precondition, maybe, or who has just bad luck, much like an aneurysm. And it's It's sad that it happened to him and not a bad person instead, but that's life. But yeah, the discussion about work-life balance in the manga and anime sector is more relevant than ever, and I feel like this also sparked it again a bit, even if it's not directly related. But some people saying like, hey, fuck him, he was taking too much breaks anyway, so it's his fault that his series isn't finished yet. And to those people I say, especially fuck you to hell and back. It's just, goddamn. Artists should do their art the way they want to, and that is now clear to me more than ever. And we are only people who basically gain the full profit margin from that because we actually get to experience that art. And yeah, we pay them for it, of course. That's how this shit works. But still, they put out some amazing stuff if they're really good at what they do, and Miura was. And we get to experience that stuff with a lot of people. And if we're very lucky, it enriches our lives. So we should be grateful that stuff like Berserk exists and that artists are willing to put so much passion into their projects and let us take part in that journey. So let them do what they want, let them do how fast or how slow they want it, and just be glad that it exists and shut the fuck up. All right, John, any words before I wrap this up?
I mean, I wasn't the fan of Berserk that you are, but I definitely, looking at the amount of work Miura put into his craft, you could tell he was super passionate about what he did. I remember reading something not too long ago about how one of his editors would yell at him to be like, why aren't you done with this? Meanwhile, he's going in at the pixel level to edit the shading on the art in the backgrounds and whatnot, so it looks just perfect. And that sort of obsessive perfectionism is just like it's some dedication.
Yes, and trust me, it leaps out of the page.
Oh, yeah. Like,
you see his stuff and you know that's how he works.
Yeah, definitely. Like, seeing some of those like full page spreads, some of the promo art, because I actually really read the comic. Mm-hmm. So, I had only seen stuff in passing, but what I'd seen was like fucking mind-boggling to see the amount of effort and just raw talent on display. And
yes, it's something to behold, and also I wish I was gifted like that. And he was gifted. I mean, a lot of that was hard work, of course. Like I said, if you see how much he improved from beginning to end, but judging from what other people said about him, he had a gift. He had something unique to him and something that he made the most use of. Like he had something in him, and be it only his passion to improve himself so much that he could surpass a lot of other artists in this medium. But he had that, and he did that, and it's so obvious. And yeah, I wish I could do something like that. And
I wish I had like 1/100th of a percent of that much talent.
Yeah, and so I'm so happy that I actually got to witness someone execute that and exercise his talent and his passion, and witness a story being born from that, and an amazing universe. And yeah, that accompanied me through a large portion of my life. So there's that as well. Always knew at some point there would be a new Berserk volume, and was always looking forward to that. To return to that universe and to those characters. And I'm, of course, I haven't done so yet, but of course, I'm going to go back and start from the beginning again pretty soon and just read through all 40 volumes. And I'm going to enjoy every second of it. And yeah, if you want to know if you should read Berserk, even though it will probably be forever unfinished, yes, absolutely, in my opinion. It is a seminal work of art that is probably unmatched in its often horrifying beauty, especially in this particular medium, and you owe it to yourself to experience it at least once in your life. If you put it down again because it's too violent for you or the story doesn't move fast enough at times, that's fine, but please give it a chance. You probably won't regret it. I know I didn't, even if I'll never get to see this fantastic story of Guts, the Black Swordsman, and the way its creator envisioned it. More than anything, I would have wished for Miura to be able to end his epic on his own terms and then get the respect he deserves for it, even more so than he already did, and he got a lot of it. All I can say is I'm very grateful to Kentaro Miura for enriching my life with his characters, world, story, and art. And I know I'm not alone with this. A lot of people feel the same. I hope his achievements will be remembered for a long time and his legacy will be everlasting. We have lost a true master, and he will be missed a lot. So yeah, Dr. Stone, Stone Wars, the second season of Stone. Show I reviewed in an episode, Sticks and Stone, I believe it was called. And yeah, I liked the first season of Dr. Stone. I thought it was a fun take on the shonen, standard shonen formula, where it's not really about battles, although there are battles in there. And there are definitely battles in this season, but it's more about our main character Senku, who is kind of like this mad scientist character, but not too mad. It's just like he loves science and he's very smart. He's a genius, and him basically outsmarting his opponents and trying to kickstart humanity after an apocalyptic event where everyone was basically turned to stone, all of humanity. And then after a couple of thousands of years, everyone wakes up, or at least a few people wake up. Senku being one of them, and then he starts to basically build up humanity again and restarts human evolution, kickstarted basically by introducing science to this new stone world and the people living in it, who are, as it turns out, descendants of some of the people he knew before. Before I get into any further detail, again, spoilers, people, for both seasons of Dr. Stone. So yeah, the people he meets in the stone world are, which was one of the later reveals in the first season, are pretty much descendants of the crew, or at least some of them are, of the crew of a space shuttle that his father was part of. I didn't know why they actually went to space. I think just some research and stuff. And then that apocalyptic event on Earth happened and they found a way to get back, but everyone was cased in stone. And then they decided to start society anew, build it up again. And that was basically one of the coolest moments and mini story arcs in the first season. And it was very well done. One of the best things about Dr. Stone, which I didn't expect when I started watching the series, is that it has some really emotional high points, like really, really resonant emotional stuff, where it's like maybe a bit corny in certain parts, but never too cheesy or anything. And the soundtrack is great. And in the first season, we have this nice moment where some of the characters die and so on. His father being basically one of them. And it's very well done. And I was surprised by how well the show did that. I did not expect that. I just expected, hey, sciencey fun times and jokes and everything. But there's a very strong emotional component to this show, which I've been enjoying quite a lot, and that continues in the second season. So where are we at the second season? Basically, Senku and his crew, mostly consisting of people he met in a village, who are, like I said, the descendants of basically his dad, so kind of distant cousins, I guess, very distant, and some of the other people from the space shuttle and so on. And he's working together with them and a couple of people that were encased in stone back in the day and that he knows from the past. And yeah, their opponent is Tsukasa, which was one of the first people Senku decided to free from his stony prison in the first season, which turned out to be a bit of a miscalculation because Tsukasa has a different plan for humanity than Senku has. Senku wants to just bring all humans back, wants to save everyone, wants to free everyone from their petrification. And Tsukasa, after a bit of thinking it over, doesn't agree with that and says, no, we're just going to revive the young people because the old ones had their chance and most of them are assholes. And they were mostly out for their own good. A lot of them were doing mischievous things to stay in power and everything. So we're just going to let them rot in case if I see any of them, I'm going to just straight out murder them, shatter the stone statues that they are now. So, yeah, he doesn't fuck around. The problem is he's also the strongest human being on the fucking planet. Like, yeah, it's some of this is a bit outrageous because considering how strong Tsukasa is, but they built that up in the first season very well, that he's like this larger than life character who has fought, I don't know, tigers and bears and has survived it, like with his bare fists, of course. And yeah, he's the
all right.
Yeah. He's the strongest high schooler. He kills a lion or a tiger in the first season. So there you go. Yeah, he's just a super strong, super powerful character. And yeah, it's for him, it's survival of the fittest, basically, down to T. So yeah, Tsukasa a different plan than Senku. They make it look in the first season for a very short while that he actually kills Senku. Make it look like that. But of course he doesn't, because Senku is super smart and he managed to protect his neck, which Tsukasa is trying to break with a part of stone skin, because as it turns out, stone skin, whatever caused that, the stone skin also has rejuvenating and healing properties. So if you keep that on your skin, it heals that part of your body or protects it, both actually. That comes into play in this season as well. So Senku survives that attack by Tsukasa. And Senku also has two other friends from basically the past time, from our time, Taiju and Yuzuriha. And they are his friends from high school and everything. And before he acts like he dies, I don't know if they actually meet after that, but I think, yeah, they do. They know that he is alive, or they are pretty sure that he is alive. And they are basically acting as molds in Tsukasa's army from that moment on. And they're basically like, okay, we're going to work, we're going to try to gain information. And we know that eventually, because Senku is this smart guy, he will have a plan. We're just going to hold out here and we're going to collect information. And then once he needs our help, we will be there and help him with his plan and try to beat Tsukasa with whatever Senku's plan is. So that's where we are at. Tsukasa has already tried to he has already sent an advance party and some to take over the village in a way without being aware that Senku is there and alive, I think. Just, in general, reconnaissance and so on. Yeah, at least I think that's what it is. I can't quite recollect if he knows that Senku is alive or if he doesn't know that he is alive. But at the beginning of this season, Senku prepares the village to basically move out. He has become, in the first season, the head of village due to a mini tournament and basically smarting his way through that, and also gaining some friends and allies. The biggest one among them probably being Kohaku, one of the former chief's daughters. And now he's trying to now that he's the new chief of the village, he's trying to get everyone ready to leave the village before Tsukasa can get there with his army and basically attack first with a surprise ambush and everything. And that's easier said than done. They have a plan. They're building a bunch of shit. The soul of Dr. Stone is Senku comes up with some ridiculous science shit that is common for us in our current advanced technology, daily life. But in this stone world, it sounds ludicrous to create something like that, like a battery, like a power plant, basically, like a light bulb and stuff like that. And he comes up with very interesting ways to create these things. And every new invention that he makes builds on the old stuff he has already invented. So to produce a certain thing, he makes an invention and then he produces something with that thing for the new invention, and so on and so on. And new things come together. And that is so satisfying. It's so satisfying to see all the different parts that we've already seen in previous episode and previous season comes together and create something new that helps them in their plans and their conquest and so on. And seeing all this ridiculous old school science, I don't know how... let's say how feasible it is if you could actually build these things and make them work in real life, and if they would be as effective as they are in the show. I have my doubts, but it's fun seeing that stuff in the show and always having it explained. And there's, I assume, big appeal for kids in this show. It's like, hey, this is how that thing works, and this is how it could work in a stone world environment and stuff like that. And all the villagers reacting to that shit. The first time they eat ramen, they go completely crazy. It's like, oh my god, this is the best thing we've ever eaten. Also, one of the first invention Senku makes in this season is cup ramen. I already said that in the sneak peek, but it sounds kind of low key, but it makes sense because it's lightweight and it's getting winter outside, so it starts to snow, so they need highly durable nourishment, which give them an advantage in the fast approaching battle against Tsukasa's army. So it makes sense that he creates that, like basically space food, and he can do that because, again, he has done a bunch of other inventions that make that possible to deep freeze and dry that food. And yeah, it's super cool to see that. In this case, they used a water mill they built before this, and a bunch of other things they invented. And it's really cool to see that. So they built a car, I think, that later gets turned into an actual fucking tank.
Oh.
Yeah, yes, it's great. It's great, a stone world tank. And aside from all the inventions that they want to use to get ahead of Tsukasa, they also, Senku built a phone, basically, a smartphone as it calls it, but it's a giant fucking backpack-sized apparatus that doesn't have the biggest of distances, but it's enough to, and that is his plan, smuggle one of those things into the headquarters of Tsukasa, and then have the other part outside of the headquarters, and then let one of his acquaintances, who was before a part of Tsukasa's army, but turned over a new leaf, or you were wondering most of the time, is he on their side now? Is he not? Because he's kind of like this mischievous mentalist character called Gen, who, as it turns out, can do a bunch of different voices as well. So their plan is to imitate the voice of the biggest idol from their time, Lillian, who was also on a spaceship and who has recorded a song for their ancestors on an archaic recording device, basically on a glass LP, if you want. And so their plan is to just play that over the smartphone for all the people from Tsukasa's army, which are from the old days, and then have Gen pretend to be Lillian and tell everyone, hey, it's not all lost. The United States are already sending help over to Japan. Everyone will be saved. Society didn't break down and everything. In other countries, we still have everything intact. So we're going to help you now. So it's a big fat lie. Because as far as they know, the entire world is in ruin because it's been several thousand years. So that is their plan, which is a big gamble, especially considering, hey, some of them might find out that this is a big lie. So what will they do then? Maybe they will rejoin with Tsukasa. So some people might recognize that that is not actually Lillian. But considering the bad audio quality of the cell phone, they think they can make it convincing enough to turn enough people in Tsukasa's army against him and take him prisoner. And their calculation is that since the stability of that army is built entirely on Tsukasa's charisma and his power and strength, him being this force of nature, things will work out for them, even if the fact they lied becomes public later on. It's quite a gamble. At the beginning of the season, I was a bit apprehensive. I was like, okay, is this gonna work? We'll see. But that's where the fun comes in. This is where the tension comes in and so on. And Senku and Gen are well aware that this is an incredible gamble, but they also are super gleeful how about what a piece of shit asshole plan they came up with. And it's really fun to see those two together. It's great. They're jackasses, but they're both smart, and especially Senku. And Senku in general is a fantastic main character. When I first looked at him, I was like, what is this? What is this hair? And he looks like a fucking turnip. And but I've really grown to like him. It's really fun how the series also emphasizes that he's not physically fit at all, not even remotely. For example, aside from him being out of breath very quickly in a lot of cases, but Tsukasa sends a scout to the village to be like, hey, okay, gather some information, and if anything happens there, let me know. And she was a gymnast. So she's more than able to match even Kohaku's attacks, who is like the powerhouse of the village. She's the best fighter and everything, and she's really strong. And then Senku manages to blind Homura temporarily with a flare, but is too much of a wimp in terms of body strength to actually subdue her. It's like this heroic scene where he throws a flare at her and then holds her down and holds her arms and everything. And, you know, in another anime where your main character has the opponent in that kind of place, that's it. But she just overwhelms him. It's super funny. But yeah, again, since the two groups can communicate over long distances, they eventually manage to lay out a trap for Homura and capture her. So it works out. It's just one of those fun scenes where you see, hey, Senku is an unusual shonen protagonist. So he's really fun. And a lot of characters in this show are super fun. I mean, I mentioned some of them already in season 1. Kinro and Ginro, who are these two brothers. One is very stern, and as it turns out in season 1, he has very bad eyesight. And then Senku builds glasses for him, and he's like, whoa, magic! And it's really great. He does the same for a cute kid called Suika, who wears like this giant hollowed out melon on her head, because as it turns out, the small holes in the melon make her eyesight a bit better. You know, as you maybe noticed before, if you have bad eyesight and you look to a small hole in a piece of paper or something like that, you get the feeling that your eyesight is a bit better because your eyes can focus artificially through that. So that's why she wears this unknowingly, that she has that can be achieved differently. And then Senku builds glasses for her as well. And that's actually, again, the emotional component that I love about this show so much. The first time she actually gets to wear her glasses and is able to see for her first time, because she has always had, since birth, super bad eyesight, was basically blind. And then the first time she actually sees the world in all its beauty, and it's beautiful in this show. This is a very, very good looking show. TMS doing great work in the art department. And the first time she actually witnesses that with full capable eyesight and everything, and tears coming into her eyes, and the music is swelling up, was great. It was fantastic and super relatable for me, who has very bad eyesight, or had it at least for a long time. But man, that was really nice. And again, one of those moments in this show that I really appreciated, and that was done really, really well. So that's basically getting back to the plot. That's the setup for the season. Getting to Tsukasa's camp, smuggling in the phone, convincing everyone that help is coming and that there is no need to do all that violent shit, and that Tsukasa can be captured and everything. And that entire plan hinges on a lot of coordination and a lot of timing. And as you can imagine, not everything is gonna go perfectly well there. Otherwise, it would be a boring thing, I guess. Boring show. But yeah, Senku wants a bloodless takeover. That is also emphasized when they capture Homura, and Kohaku, who is a fighter, says, hey, we better kill her now if she escapes. And she tells Tsukasa what is happening, that we have a fucking car, that we have a smartphone, that we have a cell phone. It's over. We can't do anything. And Senku says, no, I want to win this war with the power of information instead of violence, because my new world is founded on science and knowledge and not on violence and war. So that's admirable. And he tries his best to make it work. The show in general tackles that theme a lot. One of the characters who's like this brute, who is kind of an antagonist in the first half of the first season, or in the middle part, whose name is Magma. He's from the same village that Senku is now the chief of. When they finally arrive in Tsukasa's camp, and he sees a bunch of stone statues, he says, hey, those will eventually be revived and added to Tsukasa's army. So I want to stop that from happening, so I'm just gonna smash them now. But then Gen interferes, because he seems to know one of the statues, and one of the other characters who's like this science buddy in the village, like Senku's main science buddy, Crom, agrees because, he says, they are striving for something bigger and better in terms of what humans and society can be. So, again, Senku's ideology is pretty much reverberating throughout the entirety of the show, and also in the people from the village as well, or at least some of them. So it's cool. And especially Senku's and Crom's partnership was one of the highlights in season 1 as well, where Crom is from this new but very old world in terms of knowledge and everything, but he is basically proto-Senku. He's very much interested in learning everything about science, and he knows a lot about nature and about herbs and everything, but he can't see the bigger picture yet because, his mind is just too unadvanced. But once he comes into contact with Senku and learns the basic, he adapts so fast and becomes so adept at helping Senku come up with stuff and constructing stuff. And that's also very evident in this season, where there's like this scene, Chrome eventually gets captured, lets himself get captured so Gen and Magma can escape when they're being discovered in Tsukasa's camp by one of Tsukasa's lieutenants called Ukyo, who has like this super great hearing and has a bow and everything. And so the others don't get taken. Chrome lets himself get captured. And then he applies everything he has learned from Senku in the first season, in the second season, everything he never knew before about science and so on, and uses a battery that the secret ally slips into his cell and his own sweat to create sodium hydroxide, I believe, and melts down the ropes on his bamboo prison bars. And then uses his own knowledge he gained from experimenting with plants to fool the prison guard, Yo, into thinking he has pneumonia and manages to catch him off guard. It's really cool to see him grow and use what he has learned in season 1 and 2 to help himself, while he was relying on Senku a lot before that. So it's like coming into himself character moment, and it's always nice to see those and see cool characters grow in the show. And I think Dr. Stone does that really well for a lot of the characters. I really appreciated that, and love Crom. Love Crom, love Senku. There are so many great characters in this show. And we finally get to meet two of the greatest ones again that we haven't seen since season 1, since the beginning of season 1. And those are Taiju and Yuzuriha, who finally, once Magma, Gen, and Crom have hidden the phone in the camp, right in front of or under Senku's supposed grave, which Taiju basically created, and which he and Yuzuriha are going every day to pray, quote unquote, but they expect if Senku is still alive, he will leave a message for them there. And so they see that there's something there and they dig it up and it's the phone, and then they call Senku. And then Taiju hears his best friend ever for the first time after not being sure if he was dead or alive, and they finally get to talk to each other. And again, the music is swelling up, and Taiju is shedding some tears, and Senku says some heartfelt words, and suddenly I'm almost bawling as well. It's a great scene, which has been a long time coming. I mean, it's not been that long of a break between season 1 and season 2, but you feel like it has been a long time since you've seen those two characters. It's a long distance reunion because they're not next to each other. It's not like they can say, hey, hi. But, it's a reunion nonetheless, and it's done very, very well, and it feels good because you've grown to like these two characters in the beginning very, very much already, and you like Senku a lot, and then them finally being together again, even though it's only by phone communication, is really nice to see, and made me really happy. So again, the show does that a lot. It makes me really happy. And the plan works for a while. They managed to convince Nikki, who is one of the lieutenants in Tsukasa's army, to come over to their side. She immediately figures out that all of this is a lie because she is a Lillian super fan. She's also very buff. But instead of giving them over to Tsukasa, she agrees to help them because Senku promises her to protect that last record of Lillian they have with science in exchange for her help. And that is enough for her. There's a lot of idle lingo throwing around that you probably could make more sense of than I could. I literally wrote down in my show notes, John would eat this idle stuff up.
Would I now, really?
Yeah, I don't know what scene that relates to anymore, but I must have had a reason for writing that down. So yeah, there's a lot of music in the show, and most of that relates to Lillian, and a lot of her songs are interspliced into the show and are these key points in these pivotal moments in the show. So you have a great vocal track playing when one of the emotional high points in the show hits. So it works. It's done really well. In general, the soundtrack of the show is really good. I think I've talked about the composer before. Let me look him up again, because they're now currently working on another show I'm watching. Hiroaki Tsutsumi, who also worked on the music for Jujutsu Kaisen, which we reviewed at the beginning of this season. At least on the insert songs, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Dr. Stone has a fantastic soundtrack. And he's working on the soundtrack for Tokyo Revengers right now, which I think also has a fantastic soundtrack. So yeah, good stuff. 3 on 3 for that. For that composer. Again, it's really well done in regards to how they use music in Dr. Stone, and as a theme as well, and the theme of coming together under one idea and so on, and uniting for a common goal and stuff like that. And it's done really well. And yeah, so they get some people to come over to their side, or convince that help is on the way from Tsukasa's group. And yeah, everything seems to be going well. Even Ukyo, the archer who had captured Chrome, seems to be on their side. One of the people who is not on his side is Yo, the prison guard, who is this asshole with a very black and white sense of justice. And just seeing that character, like putting a bully like him in charge of security, doesn't really speak for Tsukasa's new and more fair world. I don't know. That rubbed me the wrong way, because Yo is a real piece of shit. But he gets his comeuppance and so on. So there you go. But yeah, a lot of people just come over basically to Senko's side without really knowing it. As it turns out, Senko and his gang learn that Chrome has been captured and they want to free him. So they send, Suka plays detective again and finds out where Chrome is being held prisoner. The tank gets upgraded with Stoneworld-style carbon armor. Yeah, that's a thing.
And, of course it is.
Yes, of course. And the elderly and the young kids stay behind, except for Suika, because she's one of the main characters, kind of. And the rest uses the new Steam Gorilla, is what this tank is called, to attempt to free Chrome. Problem is, plot twist, Tsukasa has laid a trap in case Senku attacks. He has anticipated that Senku will build a steam-powered vehicle, and Chrome is the bait. And, once Chrome realizes this, he tries to come up with a plan to warn Senku. And even better, he actually manages to free himself and escape his cell. So he can actually warn the others in person, and then they make a perfect plan to attack. Like I said, Ukyo also turns out to be a hidden companion. He's the one who slipped Chrome the battery that he could use was able to use to free himself from his prison cell. And he's willing to join the science side if Senku guarantees that no one will die in the takeover. As it turns out, Ukyo was horrified by Tsukasa destroying the human statues. And Senku agrees. Bloodless victory was his plan all along anyway. But, again, that is much easier said than done. And as it turns out, Yuzuriha is actually putting all the shattered statues back together, like painstakingly, piece by piece, with like this natural glue that she made. And she was in a crafts club in high school, so of course she can do that. But yeah, whatever. And Senku proposes that he will be able to revive them anyway, so we'll see. The plan of the gang is now, that they have everyone on their side, and Tsukasa ostensibly is still in the dark about what they actually plan to do. They plan to attack a cave that has an ingredient that they can make gunpowder from. Senku has a plan to create gunpowder on the spot, and once they have gunpowder, they are, of course, in the advantage. Like, no one can stop them. And then it's a Mexican standoff, I guess, where it's like, hey, now we have gunpowder. You can't win this. We can shoot all of you dead. You only have axes and arrows and shit like that. But we don't want to kill you, so please surrender. That's ultimately the plan. But that quick attack to take over the cave where that ingredient is housed in needs to succeed in 20 seconds, or people will probably die. Because the surprise of the attack with the tank that can only fire once will wear off and Tsukasa's people will start fighting back. So it needs to happen very fast. And it does. With a few aces up their sleeves and Taiju being the MVP of all MVPs, they actually manage to overwhelm the men that are guarding the cave without bloodshed. That houses the substance to revive the stone statue and also the gunpowder stuff. However, through sheer bad luck, it's really just bad luck. Tsukasa finds the phone a bit too early, like he stumbles over it, because for some reason he decides to go to the gravestone of Senku. And then just sees that there's like the microphone sticking out of the ground. So the gang suddenly gets intercepted by him and Hyoga. And Hyoga is his first lieutenant, who's just as strong of a fighter almost as he is, with this giant spear. And one of them alone would be a nightmare to fight, but both are near unstoppable, so this immediately turns into a desperate battle of survival. And Kohaku and the other villagers attack to give the science users enough time to come up with an emergency fallback plan. And Senku manages to force a stalemate on Tsukasa by creating nitroglycerin on the fly.
Oh.
So he is now in possession of superior firepower and the revival fluid. So he suggests a truce to avoid further bloodshed. And that works. Tsukasa allows Senku to take the revival fluid if he lets him have enough to revive his sister. Because as it turns out, Tsukasa did all of this to find and revive his sister, who was lying brain dead in a hospital bed before the new Stone Age happened.
Oof.
Yeah, and Senku helps him find her and revive her. And again, the stone skin has like kind of this healing effect. And she is fine, and she finally recognizes her brother and everything. And it's a very happy moment and scene, everything. But it's still an uneasy truce, because Tsukasa still believes there is not enough resources and revival fluid to revive the in his eyes undeserving and, risking the lives of the untainted generation of youths under his command. It's still, that's also one of the more interesting parts, again, of the show, where it's like, hey, you have these two different ideologies. Senku is like this guy, no, if we trust in science, if we trust in the advances humanity has made, we can grow beyond what we have been doing in the old age. Now we can start anew, we can start over, we can get farther than we have ever come before. And if we trust in science, we can become better, we can grow past our warmongering selves and so on. And Tsukasa doesn't believe that. He's like, no, this is how men are, and now we have a chance with these youths that have not been corrupted by the old system to actually start anew and have a true, simple world that is not overcomplicated by the stuff that we had before, by our history and so on. And he says that they are using his crew, his people are using basic science like fire or tools, simple tools like hammers and stuff. But advanced science in the past led to weapons of mass destruction, so he wants to regulate advancement. And again, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
Which makes him such an enigmatic opponent. In his world, there would never be an atom bomb. He would not let that happen. He just wants a simple world, which is a cruel world in certain ways, because, you maybe don't have certain medical advancements, or you don't have all the luxuries that current life has. But he's like, no, this is better, because humanity won't be tempted to evolve into something bad or worse than they are right now. This is more pure. This is more how we are supposed to be. And I can see his point of view, because we know what uncontrolled advancement can cause. We have seen that several times during the course of humanity's history. So I can see his point. Doesn't mean I agree with him, but it's interesting to see these two ideologies clash. But yeah, so they have a truce, there is peace. It's like, hey, okay, you won this war for now, and you helped me revive my sister, so I'm willing to watch what you are doing and give your plan a chance, basically. I don't agree with you, but you won this conflict, basically. You outmaneuvered me, so it's fine. Or it would be if it didn't turn out that Hyoga does only share part of Tsukasa's vision, as in, yeah, let's revive only a selection of people, but instead of reviving only the youth, he wants to revive only the elite. He considers himself a member of course. And yeah, a fight ensues. He mortally wounds Tsukasa by using his revived sister as bait. It looks really bad, but then Tsukasa and Senku team up together, like brawn and science together as a team, and beat the shit out of Hyoga, which is very satisfying to see. He's a giant piece of shit, and it's nice to see him just get beaten into a pulp, basically. It's really cool. It's really cool seeing, after all this time, Tsukasa and Senku are working together as well. And it's like, this seems like the show has been kind of building up towards that in a way, very successfully, and it's super satisfying. Tsukasa is, like I said, mortally wounded, and the only thing they can basically do is put him into a cryostasis. In a way, they freeze him up, which means until Senku finds a way to revive him from that, advanced science far enough that he can actually cure Tsukasa's wound, his injury, so that he can survive out of the cryostasis, he is dead. And yeah, that's how this chapter basically comes to a close. It's basically the end of the first actual arc. Because, that part of the story is now over. That relied on Tsukasa being the antagonist. It's like these first 2 seasons are kind of like one big arc with several different steps. Senku waking up, his friends waking up, him waking Tsukasa up, then, the split, then Senku building up the village, and then the very short war against Tsukasa's people, and then, Tsukasa dying by the hands of Hyoga. But yeah, that's kind of it for the second season. And Senku again states that saying we can't revive everyone. He says this is one of the last words he says to Tsukasa, I think, which again is a great scene, his last conversation with Tsukasa. Because they have been friends before, there was this conflict in interest and in ideologies. But, Senku states that saying we can't revive everyone because the world can't sustain 7 billion people is too logical and boring. So if the world can't sustain that many people, science will find a way to make it possible. And that's his goal, and that's his ideology, and that's what he's striving for. And that's the thing that's going to happen, or that's what he's going for. He's going to keep on advancing humanity and science, and the next thing they build is a giant boat, a ship, and he plans to sail the world. And the last thing is what we see them in is in pirate outfits, basically. And,
sure.
Yeah, sure, why not? And a bunch of them just get on the ship, and now it's like, hey, now we're going to have a world tour in the next season, probably. And I'm very much looking forward to that. I have been enjoying the shit out of Dr. Stone. I think it's a fantastic show. I think if you like shonen stuff like I do, it's one of those shows just like Food Wars that just completely mixes up the formula that you are used to. Yes, there are battles in there. Yes, there are also kind of tournaments in there in a way, but it's handled from a completely different perspective, and the focus is completely different. It's like, hey, here's all this cool science shit. And how would that work in such a weird, archaic environment? How would that work with people who have no idea about how that stuff works? And yeah, here's Senku to explain it to you. And every time he does, he turns into this weird, super deformed mecha dude and explains that shit to you. Also, pretty much a lot of the inventions he makes have like this footnote, please don't try this at home, kids. Which is very nice. Or at least not without supervision. But yeah, that's cool. And then you get these nice RPG screens where it's like, acquired cell phone, and then it's like this victory music and so on, like da 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 da, like in Final Fantasy or stuff like that, and it's really cool. So this show is incredibly charming, and it has so many charming characters, and the story is cool, and the ideas they tackle and so on. It's really, really nice. There's some interesting themes in there, and all the stuff about humanity being better than what it was before, and that Senku being this idealist is very comforting. And it's like, hey, I don't necessarily believe in that, but I want to subscribe to your newsletter. I want to subscribe to that ideal that you have, and I want to believe in that. And it's a very hopeful show. It's a very, very hopeful show, which is something you could really use in the past year. And pretty much everyone, and I could as well. And I almost came always out of Dr. Stone with very good feelings and a very hopeful attitude and feeling good about the things humanity actually has achieved. Because the show celebrates that. And it doesn't, like I said, when it comes to Tsukasa's point of view, it doesn't actually exclude the stuff that went wrong, with the weapons of mass destruction and everything. It says, yeah, humanity has done a lot of bad things and has had a lot of problems and has made wrong decisions. And that's what his worldview also, what makes it so potent. And, him such an enigmatic villain or antagonist. He's not really a villain. But it's like, you want to believe in Senku because he's a cool character and he's fun, and you want to believe in the force of science and what he believes science should do and how it should serve humanity. And yeah, it's great. It's a great show. It's super entertaining. It's super funny. There are a lot of really good shows. Dr. Stone is reaction face heaven. If you love funny anime faces, this show is for you. There's so many funny fucking faces in this show. It's ridiculous. And so many different ones. I would say One Piece also has great reaction faces, but it's mostly the same, which has these giant bulging eyes and wide open mouths with tongues lashing out of the mouth. No, Dr. Stone has so many different fucking hilarious reaction faces. It's a joy. Good jokes, good banter. There's a lot of funny dialogue in this show, and ludicrous characters, larger-than-life characters, very cool, distinctive character designs. And like I said, great soundtrack, great artwork. The animation is kind of basic. There's some high points, like the battle between Hyoga, Tsukasa, and Senku is animated really well, as it should be. But mostly it's, serviceable, as I would expect from TMS, at least for this kind of show. And, the focus, like I said, isn't really on the battles, on the action as much. It's mostly on the cool science shit and coming up with that and getting the upper hand through that. But again, if you want some action, it's in there. And so I can't really add anything more to that. I would wholeheartedly, to anyone, at least anyone who likes shonen anime, watch Dr. Stone. It's a lot of fun. I hope it stays as good as it has been for these past 2 seasons, because I enjoyed the fuck out of it, and I think you will too if you give it a chance. Both seasons are streaming on Crunchyroll, sub and dub, maybe. At least English dubbed on Funimation, but subbed on Crunchyroll, I'm pretty sure. And in a bunch of other places for different countries. So yeah, again, check it out. It's not too long. I think the first season was 24, 26 episodes, and the second one is only 13 or 12. Would have to look it up, but I think that's how it worked out. And yeah, I can't wait for the next season. I think it's going to be a blast, just like the first 2 seasons have been. I hope it's going to be. I'm pretty sure, though. And I hope the manga will have the story will have a satisfying ending at some point, but it's probably going to be a while until we get there, because we have still only reached the seafaring era, and there's still a lot of ground to cover to get to the space age, I would say. So to our current time, and maybe we'll get past that. We'll see. We'll see what Senku comes up with, if he wants to go to space eventually. And we still need to uncover what actually caused that whole petrification thing. So that's also one of the mysteries that's still in the background. So it's probably going to be a lot of fun getting there and meeting new people and seeing what happened to the other countries that they're probably going to get to in the next season. Yeah. So definitely, please join me in finding that out whenever the 3rd season of Dr. Stone hits, because I'm definitely going to watch it, and I hope you give it a chance too. Pretty sure you will enjoy it a lot.
So, now that the Stone Wars are over, or have they just begun?
They're over.
It's time for a different type of war. I believe is referred to in the intro sequence of the next show as My War.
Is it?
Yes, Boku no Senso.
All right. I don't think I've ever looked at the lyrics in the OP, actually.
So, before we get too deep into that,
full spoilers! Again,
of course,
just a warning.
Full spoilers. And the next show we're talking about is the not final season of Attack on Titan. God. So I'm sure I've brought up before, I listened to Pat and Wooly on Castle Super Beast, and they bring up this imaginary person that they sort of dreamt up in their heads. His name is Paul Marketing.
Okay.
Calling this show Attack on Titan final season was definitely Paul Marketing's idea.
I mean, it was probably planned to be the actual final season, but then things probably didn't go the way that the production committee planned.
Oh, without a
For,
doubt. But yeah, you said you hadn't looked up the lyrics to the song, which is interesting because the lyrics to the song are almost entirely English.
really? Well,
Yeah, it's so
true. Yeah,
distorted
but
over the song that,
it's yeah, exactly. I almost couldn't make out any words.
yeah,
But
so
yeah, this is my last something that I heard those. But
yeah, and
yeah.
just to read the first verse, it goes a little something like this, and I think this is a good preface. Let's start a new life from the darkness until the light reveals the end. Fear, hatred, sorrow, desperation. Even you look miserable. Look down from above. I feel awful. The time has come. Let's all go home. Sinister faces, growing curses. This is my last war.
Good times! As always in Attack on Titan land.
This is the first time we've had the show without an intro by Revo and Linked Horizon, which is interesting.
Yes. It's also, it could immediately from the get-go, you get the feeling...
Things are bad.
Yeah,
Things are the worst they've ever been.
Yeah, not only bad, but also completely different compared to what we got before with this show. Like, you know, in the first season, Attack on Titan was mostly a very straightforward shonen show. Like young people fighting monsters and dying a lot story. Like it's, hey, we have our three main protagonists and we have this clear and present threat. And it's about our three characters overcoming that threat. And then things got more complicated when some of the monsters were revealed to be human. Then things get even more complicated when a conspiracy in the government is revealed in season 3. And then we get our final reveals where we learn about the origin of the world and the antagonistic party at work who set the whole events starting in season 1 into motion. But it has mostly been our heroes against the intruders story. And this changes completely in this final season or this first part of the final season. Instead, this now becomes a meditation on war and breaking the never-ending cycle of violence and hatred that entails. So when our friends who are reading the manga told us it becomes something very different by that final arc, they weren't lying.
It's so weird, too, because there's this jump. There's this time skip. It's not really explained. It's not really gone into. And apparently, it was the same thing in the manga, which is weird because part of me wants to know what happened. How long was it? I think it was supposed to be was it 3 years?
I think 3 years, yes.
I want to know what happened there. And I don't know, neither of us know if the manga goes into that, but it'd be interesting to see, what caused certain decisions by certain characters to be made.
I mean, we learn about some of them, and I think most of the reason that is not explained beforehand is so that the show can set up new mysteries. Because, in the first 3 seasons, it was like, this show was like this mystery box. We don't know where the Titans come from. We don't know what the thing is with the basement, with Eren's basement. That is teased very early on. We know there are some secrets there that will reveal ultimately everything. And it does, kinda, at the end of the 3rd season. And there's this clear goal in mind and everything. And now most of these mysteries have been revealed. At the end of season 3, part 2, we are pretty much in the know on almost all things. Not all of them. Like, we don't know all about Marley. We don't know all about the motives of Zeke. We don't know all about how Reiner and his party, Annie and Berthold, actually came to this land and so on and what happened. But we can guess most of it. And most of the big things we have been questioning ourselves about, or the show from the get-go, are revealed. So now the show has to do something new to make things interesting again. So what it does is, like you said, it throws us into a completely different setting with completely new cast of characters like we've never seen before. And some of them we have seen before, but we don't recognize immediately because, it's been 3 or more years. And I didn't recognize Reiner the first time I saw him again. It's like, who's that?
Neither. It was only until he started speaking. I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's super jarring in the beginning. It's like, hey, is this... What is happening? Where are we going with this? What is this? Okay, this is kind of this World War I/World War II setting, drawing a bit of imagery and iconography from both of these wars. You have trench warfare in the very first episode, which is reminiscent of First World War. And you have a lot of Nazi iconography in certain parts, and the armbands the Eldian people wear, who are basically put into a ghetto in Marley. They're shorthand for Jewish people in the Second World War, at least in this context. And it's like, hey, we invoke the imagery of Jewish people from the Second World War to tell you that immediately, hey, these are oppressed people. These are people that are being used, being abused, and that are mistreated in horrible ways. So Isayama doesn't have to go through the trouble to explain all of it in excruciating detail, which he still does in some parts later. But it's like, hey, here's some new shit, and some of the shit you don't understand, but you can immediately, from stuff you know from the real world, understand what these factions are about. Here are the bad guys, here's the military apparatus that is abusing these kids and abusing these Titan shifters and so on, and making them their tools. And at the same time, they're feeding the oppressed people this reworked ideology and brainwashing them into thinking that this is the way to go and this is the way to become free, which is one of the new main characters, Gabi, which we'll get to her, is one of those characters who is like deeply indoctrinated into this system, which leads to a lot of bad things. So this is the new setup. This, like, we see these new kids who are the new prospects for the Titan powers that other characters have now. Reiner still has the Armor Titan. Zeke still has the Beast Titan. The new guy called, what's his name? With the lion mane and the mask.
Galliard, yeah.
Galliard. I think,
yeah, just think about that for a second myself.
Yeah, he ate Ymir, didn't he? Those are, yeah, right. So these are parts, which is interesting considering right from the get-go, I'm like, okay, are we going to get a payoff for that? Is he going to meet Historia? Because, you know, she and Ymir were kind of in love, and it's going to be, but I don't think that will happen. Feels like they're not kind of trying to do something with that, really. And it's not really shown or mentioned. You just hear that he has that particular Titan's power now, but we never see him being the one who eats Ymir. We never see her actually being killed or stuff like that. So she just disappeared from the show. It feels a bit weird, but it's like, no, we need to get to the new stuff. So that's one of the things where, just like you, I wonder, is that something that we're going to be filled in on? Is that maybe in the manga or stuff like that? Or did Isayama just deem that not necessary and being like, hey, she's just a victim of war, one of many?
I wonder about that. There's a lot of lines to put in between the dots. Mm-hmm. I don't know quite how to describe, how some of these weird new revelations in this show hit me, and I get that the whole World War I and II iconography is there to, make its point. Mm-hmm. But boy, people had a lot to say about that.
Yes, and I have not read it yet. I know there is the fucking Polygon article that has been published back when the end of season 3 hit, I think. And I was like, I'm not going to read that because that is going to spoil stuff that happens in the final season. It happens in the final arc of the manga. And I'm probably not going to read it until we watch the final season, so part 2 of this come next year. But I'm interested what they have to say. I can, there's still some parts in this show where I'm like, I can see how they can come to a certain conclusion, but just judging from... Oh, we'll get to that. We'll work our way through this. But just judging from what we've seen, if they just criticize them using that kind of iconography in here, and that's like justifying the Holocaust or something, then they didn't really pay attention, in my opinion. But again, there's a decision 2 characters in the show later in this season make that is very problematic, and that has not gotten a resolution yet, and there has not been a stance taking on that decision and that worldview yet as this season wraps up. So we'll see, but we'll get to that. I know a lot of people had opinions on this, and a lot of people also were turned off, apparently, by these final developments and the final arc just in general, because it shifted to a completely different setting, it shifted to a new set of characters, and the atmosphere and everything and what it was trying to say completely changed. It wasn't this kind of simple, quote-unquote, though Attack on Titan never was that simple, but still kind of straightforward shonen tale where it's like, hey, we have our heroes who have to grow to overcome this threat, to now our heroes might actually be the villains, or there are no villains in the story because it's just about war and they're only losers and only just villains in war, because this is and victims. There are no winners in this. Yeah.
Only those who will write history in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the story now. That's what all of this seems to have been building up towards. I don't know if Isayama had that planned from the beginning, or if he was in the beginning, I'm just going to do a cool story about monsters. I don't fucking know. I mean, I don't know how far he planned this in advance, but this is now what the story is leading towards. It's like, hey, we have the Marleyans on the one side, we have the people from Paradis, the aliens from Paradis on the other side, and the other aliens who have grown up in Marley and who are brainwashed into thinking this is the life they need to lead, and there are horrible people and they need to pay for the sins of their ancestors constantly and so on. And all these different factions are clashing with each other in this horrible, horrible war. If you thought the first 3 seasons of Attack on Titan were depressing, you have not seen anything yet.
Strap yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. There's almost no levity in this season. There's some goofy scenes here and there, just with certain reaction faces and stuff like that, because Isayama also loves to do that. Where there's some characters acting goofy and stuff like that. And that's still partially in there, but not as much as in the first 3 seasons, and definitely very rarely. It's just plot, and the theme hammered home with horrible shit happening and with a lot of violence on both sides. And all characters you've known before and that you've rooted for acting like despicable assholes in a way, and ruthless to an incredible amount. So I can understand why people would get turned off by that, because it's like, hey, now you have to question the characters you've been rooting for, and now it all becomes complicated, and a lot of people don't like complicated, especially when it comes to their feelings towards, simple cartoon characters.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but I think you got to give your characters depth somehow, and boy does this hit different as far as that goes.
One of the things I want to bring up immediately, because I see so many parallels. I mean, I've mentioned this in an episode before when I talked about Slime Time 2, which definitely doesn't care about breaking a cycle of violence and revenge, like I said. But aside from that, there are a lot of shows that have tackled that in the previous years, apparently, Gundam has always done that, where it's like, hey, war sucks, but we kind of have to deal with it, or it happens. That's one of the core messages of Gundam, where it's like, hey, here, look at this horrible war, but also look at these cool mechs flying around, which is also kind of this contradiction where it's like, man, war sucks, but it can look really, really awesome. Look at that fucking Zaku. Does it look great? And yeah.
It's painted red. It must mean it goes 3 times faster.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah.
I mean, in particular, like Gundam Wing and 00 were all about trying to use violence to stop violence. 00 in particular with the armed interventions from celestial being.
Yes, which backfired.
Yes, very hard.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's so weird though, because that's just what it is, and it sucks because you need to stop fighting. Takes out a gun. Yeah, well, I'll also take out my gun. You need to stop fighting. Well, I guess we're right back where we started.
Yes, and exactly.
That definitely comes into play a lot in this season of the show.
Where it's like, hey, we have these past grudges. We have these clashes of ideology. And in the real world, it's even more complicated than that. It's already kind of complicated in the show with the history of the aliens, who have definitely made some, or at least that's how it's portrayed. We still don't know if that's really the completely true history, like all of it, but who have really waged war on the world and have killed so many people. But then at a certain point, the alien king, Titan King, basically decides that, no, we don't want to do that anymore. We're gonna retreat with our people to this island and live in peace and let the rest of humanity live in peace from us. And we're going to live a completely pacifistic life. We're not going to attack anymore. We're just going to live here and be peaceful. And that's it. And we're going to create a hero, which apparently the King of the Titans did with the family that is introduced in the season. I already forgot his name. Was it Tybur or something?
Yeah, the Tyburs, yeah.
Yeah, the Tyburs, right. So they created this fake hero that, according to legends, then slayed the Titans and so on. So basically gave the people something to strive for, which, I don't know, maybe would have been a better choice to actually let them hear the actual story. Where it's like, no, we're just gonna retreat now, and we're not gonna do this shit anymore.
But that doesn't sound good in the history books.
Yeah, apparently. I don't I think they gave a valid reason for why they actually chose to make that lie happen, but I have forgotten about it. And maybe I've written down it in my show notes, and we'll get to it. I'm taking a lot of stuff from my later notes out of here, but that happens. So the king of the Titans tried to break this circle of violence, but his people who were still left on the mainland in Marley suffered for it. Like they were, because the Marleyans wouldn't let it go, maybe because of the faulty history and everything. They weren't able to let go of past grudges, and all aliens on the mainland in Marley are treated, and that is hammered home again. Attack on Titan is not a subtle show. Like, not at all. Like, that, like it's the opposite of subtle, and it gets hammered home so hard in this season that the aliens living in Marley are treated like absolute dog shit. Like, they are treated like tools, they are treated like subhuman, they are treated like things. They are treated like garbage, like literal garbage. Several times that happens. And some of them react to that in different ways. There's Zeke's father, who tried to raise the resistance and give the aliens power back again and join with the party forces. And then there are people who are like, no, we gotta show that we are good aliens, that we can adhere to the Marleyan rule and show that we're better people than our ancestors were. Even inside their own ranks, there is this conflict due to the outside interference by the Marleyans and due to the histories. So there's so much conflict and so much strife and so much complicated relationships in this show and in the history. And again, I can see that being a problem for some people, the show suddenly focusing on that instead of the big booming action. And don't get me wrong, there's big booming action in this season. But yeah, what I wanted to talk about earlier was a bunch of shows have been apparently doing that, and not only shows, but only games. But come to mind, Dr. Stone, we just talked about it. Senku is trying to, make this peaceful takeover in a way. He doesn't want to use violence. There has to be a way to make this happen peacefully. Which, again, Dr. Stone is a very idealistic show and a much more simpler show. Much more simpler. But it tries to ascribe to at least some of the same messaging, where it's like, hey, let the violence stop. Like we said, Gundam in certain parts tries to do that. Funnily enough, Black Clover, which I'm watching, but probably will not review right now, just did that as well. The part where I'm at anyway. I mean, the show's already finished, but I'm only halfway through. It's a lot of episodes. But that's my exercise anime. Where I can't take show notes. So, but yeah, that also got brought up because there's this conflict between elves and the humans, and all the elves were eradicated by humans and are now plotting their revenge and everything. So there's that, and our main character's like, we should maybe just listen to each other and not hold on to past grudges. But that's easier said than done. And a game that has been dealing with that subject matter pretty prominently in the past year was Last of Us 2. And a lot of people didn't like that either, because it dared to make a lot of the characters that we've been established to in the first game unsympathetic, and also give us characters who are, in the beginning, casted as villains, and spoilers, but, it's an older game, so why haven't you played it yet? And then, after the first half of the game, you actually play that villain. And you actually see, oh no, there's a different side to all of this. And this is just the fucking result of conflict, past grudges, hate, violence in this fucking rotten world. And if people were able to see past those grudges they have, there might be a way to escape this never-ending circle of violence and misery and despair. And that's all that Last of Us 2 is about. Getting to that point for at least one of the characters. And Attack on Titan final season is that as well. Very much so. This is one of the first things I saw, because I was, I had just wrapped up playing that game when this first part of the final season of Attack on Titan was like, oh, Isayama's doing the same fucking thing. I mean, he did it earlier than Last of Us 2 because the manga is a bit older, but it's like, oh, this is the same theme. This is really the same story. We're gonna we have seen only one side of the conflict now, and we deemed all the shit they did as heroic and being the good thing and the right thing. And now we see the other party that have been the clear-cut villains from the get-go that needed to be dealt with in the first 3 seasons. And now we see, oh no, they have been part of this fucking system and this apparatus, and that was a reason why they did what they did. And they didn't necessarily want to do it, but it's the only thing they could do in their eyes to survive, to make something better for their own people. And then you got this clash, and you got this war, and you got this cycle of violence and hatred. And that also resulted from the history of these two different nations and people and so on. And it just goes around, and people just keep on fighting and hating and killing. And if no one tries to get past that, then that won't happen. Even if someone tries, like the King of the Titans at some point, it might not work out because some people might still to keep on holding on to power and everything like the Tybers did. That might have been the reason, actually, they did it. I'm not sure. They might keep certain things intact because they can gain money from it, they can gain power from it. So it's very, very hard to break these systems, to break these cycles. And I felt like the show, besides showing us all this fucking misery, which it really does a lot, it was constantly trying to look at these things from different perspectives. And besides showing us all the point of views from the different characters and the different sides of the conflict, it was also trying to actually ask the question, is there a way out of this? You know, was there ever in history a way where if you went the full pacifism route, if both parties agreed to completely abandon all grudges, is that something that is even possible? There have been deaths on both sides. There have been so many lives lost. So a lot of people just see what they've lost and all the hatred, and there is no way to get past this. And they are not necessarily saying here, one party is more right than the other, though I would disagree with that. And especially, you know, considering how Marley has acted in recent times. But here it is. And you take a look at it and you tell me what you think. Because so far, Isayama has not made a definitive statement, I think, on all the stuff that he posits in this show, in this season. Or do you think that he has made a clear statement on, okay, these guys are definitely the bad guys, these are definitely the good guys, there's a definite way out of this, and this is the right way?
It's a weird question to answer, just because
it's not finished.
And because a lot of the goings on in this season have been around alliances shifting, changing, different characters having different attitudes towards each other, about 100 different backstabs per week.
Oh yeah,
and just I do wonder if. We haven't quite gotten to this part of the story yet, but I do wonder if one of the decisions that a character has decided to align himself with is to make himself look bad.
Yeah.
So that he can find some sort of other solution?
Yeah, well, that I'm wondering about. We'll get to that. Yeah, that's also one of the things. That's what I was alluding to earlier, when it's like, okay, there's this decision these characters make at the very tail end of the show, where it's like this sounds very bad, and I hope that is not what you're going for with that. No, that is actually the right thing to do. Isayama, I really hope you don't, because then I have to probably agree with the Polygon article, because that's horrible. But yeah, we shouldn't talk around it any longer. We just should get into the fucking plot and what is happening in this show. So yeah, I looked it up. 4 years have passed since the end of last season.
Okay, I was close.
Yeah, you were close. So, due to the advances of war machinery, Titans are on the brink of becoming an obsolete war tool, but they're still in use. And we see all of that from the Malian side of things. Like I said, we see the new recruits and meet new characters like Falco and Gabi and so on. Maybe even before we get into the deep plot stuff, let's quickly talk about some changes in the production department, because the show changed studios. It's not WIT anymore, it's now MAPPA. And that means there are some visual changes as well, because Titans are now 3D CG, at least partially, which should piss me off, and it kind of does. Some parts don't look good. Always, any time that Titans move very slow, it's this choppy frame rate again. One shot of the Beast Titans in one of the last episodes of this season looks really bad, in my opinion. But in general, the MAPPA models look and animate a lot better than the with CG models. Like the CG model of the Colossal Titan in the 3rd season looked really goofy when the show was still in Wit's hand.
I forgot how it looked, and now you're awakening some memories.
Yeah, now they mostly use the CG models for the Titans that move quickly, where you can compensate with a lot of interesting 3D camera movement, 3D pans and zooms and stuff like that. And you also get a lot of that while characters are walking and talking in the show. Not all the time, but in some episodes it's very noticeable. For the example, the 2nd one. And there's some more general body movement in that episode as well. So when the fights actually happen, when there's a lot of movement around, then the CG models are fine. And there's some shots interspliced in between where they are still hand-drawn. Mostly for your blockbuster shots, where it's just Eren breaking out of a building in his Tech Titan form and stuff like that. And the stuff is still drawn and looks great. And, you know, parts of the fights are also still hand-drawn. On all the character models, the normal ones are, thankfully, still hand-drawn as well. So it mostly looks good. There's just some spotty moments here and there where it's like, that CG model looks way too stiff and the frame rate is way too low here. So it never gets to Berserk levels or shit like that, but it's noticeable in parts. But yeah, I would still say that the show is not worse than when it was in Wit's hands. There are not as many crazy tracking shots like we had in the Wit shows with the maneuver gear. But on the other hand, there's not much use made of maneuver gear in this season anyway. There's one big fight scene in a city, and that's where that comes into play. But after that, we have one more in the woods with Levi and everything. But aside from that, it still looks great. Maybe missing some of the more ridiculous shots we had in the Studio Witch stuff. But it still animates really well. And when it hits, it really hits hard. So I would say Mappa did do a good job. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned everything there is to mention about that. You know, like the CG, some of the models were a little bit from time to time, but I was worried going into this because Mappa has been stretching themselves very thin lately. There's a video from Canapa Effect talking all about that.
Yes.
But I feel like of 2 or 3 episodes in, seeing that it was mostly pretty consistent, I feel like my fears were kind of assuaged. And it held steady throughout pretty much most of the show's run. So I was like, all right, you know, maybe I was worried for nothing. But, you know, we have seen in the past where Mappa produced shows start out strong and then they kind of partway through.
Yes. But do you feel there is that drop in this show at a certain point? Or did you feel like it stayed consistent mostly?
I feel like it was mostly pretty consistent throughout. So I
would agree.
I don't think I would say it looked bad at any given point. So
it probably took some shortcuts in the conversation scenes, just like the show did when it was still in Vid's hands. But I would say for the most part, it looked really good. And I never really, aside from a few wonky shots and the CG models and stuff like that, I never felt like, hey, okay, this is, I wish this stayed with Wit. I would have liked if it stayed with Wit, just because I would like to have seen a singular vision brought to an end by that studio for this show. But there are a lot of talented people at Mappa and it shows. So I don't mind what they did with the show. Yeah, like I said before, this season immediately shows us what a shitty position the alien people that live under Malayan rule truly are. Like I said, they've been indoctrinated so much in the revisionist history of the Malay people that they are willing to turn against their own kind without reservation. So that's something we are made immediately aware of. And yeah, now that the show can't rely on its mystery box setup anymore, since, like I said, all the big mysteries have been revealed, it fills in all the little plot holes we haven't learned about yet. We learn about how Reiner, Berthold, and Annie inherited their Titan powers and went on their mission. Reiner's background is elaborated on with his father being Malayan and his mom an alien. He was actually not supposed to inherit the Armored Titan's powers because he was the weakest in class. But one of his classmates, Marcel, fixed the grading to protect his brother from the horrible fate of being a legacy Titan host. Then Marcel got eaten, and Reiner took over as leader by trying to just drive himself to be what Marcel was. And as we have already come to understand in the previous 2 seasons, that facade and protective shell he put up to will the success of the mission into existence could only last so long for Reiner and would eventually lead to his already incredibly weak and traumatized psyche to break. Honestly, it's a surprise he lasted as long as he did. If you remember that scene where he was just talking to himself when they had Emir captive, I think, was it the 2nd season? And when he just out and told Eren about their true identities and stuff like that, you could see that Reiner was completely Like, his mind was completely wrecked at this point already. And now we know why that happened and how all this came to be. But yeah, it's neat because it gives some more depth to a character we knew very little about before. Doesn't make him necessarily more likable, I would say, but you can see where he's coming from. And he's actually about to kill himself when we return to the present, because he can't live anymore with what he has done, but stops because he's willing to put his hope into the cadets, namely Falco, I think, the other New Titans candidates, that they might change things maybe. And he might be able to actually help the new generation and stuff like that. And yeah, so we get filled in on a bunch of the characters we've known about for a while now. That's cool. Did we already know Annie was Kenny's daughter? That just popped out at me at some point in the show. Like, Kenny from the 3rd season. We knew that his sister had a child or something. And I thought that was Levi, but yeah.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, weird. It just gets dropped, I think. But yeah, it's weird. And then pretty early on, we see a character on a bench with long hair and a crippled leg. And I'm like, hey, that character looks familiar.
He also sounds very familiar. It was just... Apparently this was done a lot better in the manga, but boy, when they reveal Kruger, who's that guy? Boy, he sounds familiar. Who could he be? And like, it doesn't really work in the anime.
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't.
It doesn't, because you hear his voice, you see his face in close up, and I'm like, that's Eren. That's fucking Eren. So, and to be fair, they don't keep this a mystery for much longer. I think for 1 or 2 episodes at all, if at all.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, so that's fine. It's not like, whoa, new mystery. Who's this character? No, it's just Eren. You wonder how he got there, but you definitely know it's him. So it's fine. Yeah, then we get filled into the history of Marley or the aliens in general. And apparently, now I remember. Thanks, show notes. So the thing was the Titan families waged war against each other. And, the Marleyans, I think, got thrown into that conflict. And that's how all that stuff happened. It was Titans against Titans. And to ultimately end the war, Tybur and King Fritz schemed to create a fake Malayan hero to end the war. And Fritz retreated to Paradise and created the walls, but promised not to attack Marley, even if they were to take the founding titan from him. Like I said, he was the ultimate pacifist in that regard. So the Tyburs wanted to hold on to their power, I guess, but were willing to, at least for now, agree to the plan. But in the background, they were still trying to manipulate stuff and people, and eventually trying to get the founding titan power back from King Fritz and the Paradise people. Because Titans were made into a war instrument, and war needs its soldiers and everything. So Marley was then trying to, take over the rest of the world. So that's what Titans are needed for. So the conflict was bound to get back to Paradise eventually. And yeah. Eren does not subscribe to the ideal of pacifism that King Fritz tried to propagate, I guess. Since his mom was killed when Reiner, who admits that he moved on with the mission to become a respected hero, so very selfish kind of goal, even though that was not born from pure selfishness, but, because of his family and everything. But Reiner broke through the wall, and Eren's mom got eaten by his dad's ex-wife. I think we talked about that in the review of the last season, but yeah, the grinning titan that ate Eren's mom was Grisha Yeager's former wife, who got turned into a titan, which was one of the holy shit reveals at the end of the 3rd season. I think my jaw dropped on the floor when that happened. It was like, holy fucking shit. But yeah, Eren admits that he is just like Reiner, at least in that part of the plot. And he says he has now spent enough time with the enemy that he knows that there are good people here. He has eaten with them, slept under their roof, just like Reiner did with the people of Paradise. But he has lost so much that he can only move forward to save the world by saving his world.
Yeah.
And his worldview. And we've never seen Eren like this. He's so fucking terrifyingly sober. Every word is this weird combination of understanding tone and kindness, but also a quietly burning threat rips off every syllable.
Yeah, he comes across like so
Driven.
I think a good word is disconnected.
Yes, that's all. Yeah, that's true. Driven and disconnected at the same time. He feels so cold in a way, but also you feel like there's still this boiling hatred under the surface. And we understand the moment Eren tells Reiner to stay in the basement by basically saying, without actually saying it, you better sit your ass down and listen, boyo, or I'm gonna transform under this house full of people and kill them all. And then he does it anyway, because that's his plan. And wow, the threatening atmosphere in the basement where Eren has duped Falco into leading Reiner is so thick with dread, it's amazing. Like, that was one of the coolest scenes in this season for me, because I was just on the edge of my seat. It was just so, holy fucking shit, this is, whoa, what is happening? Why is Eren like this now? This is horrifying. Like, the sheer terror on Falco's and Reiner's face when they realize that Falco helped the enemy even by sending letters to Eren's comrades is understandable. I mean, Eren was doing a great job posing as amputee war veteran, but still, it's just like, holy shit. Like the whole episode with that confrontation, the theater performance created by Willy Tybur, the music, all the gears turning, the tension rising and rising once you realize what is going on and what will happen at the end of the episode. Like, everything culminates in probably one of the most epic Titan transformations ever in this show, if not the best. Like, the build up throughout the entire episode is so incredibly strong. Like I said, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. And I think this was a masterclass example of a well-staged, thrilling build-up to a world-shattering event. I loved every second of it. I don't know how you felt about it.
Oh. I will say this about pretty much the entirety of this season. Everything about it, like, you know, even though it changed production crews, there's a familiar name on the crew that we haven't brought up, and that is Hiroshi Seko. He had done writing alongside a couple other people with the past season, but he handled, you know, this entire season on his own. And boy, he was able. We know he can write a good story, you know, based on what we saw in like Mob Psycho and other shows, but he was able to just take this story and like make it so much more gripping from the very first to where it ended. Fuck, dude, like that scene in particular was like, you know it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be bad for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
And then you hit that point and it's like, oh man, oh shit.
Yes, and it's horrifying. They make an effort to show you that there are kids in this building, that they're playing, that people are watching the theater and stuff like that. And they make an effort to show you Eren is willing to kill all of these people now. That's what he has been driven to. That's the character he is right now. There's this nice moment where Willy Tybur is on stage and Eren and Reiner are in the basement of this house and they listen to his speech. And Willy says he doesn't want to die and why he was born into the world and everything. And there's a subtle reaction on Eren's face. And it's like, hey, he has said the same thing at a certain point. It's a nice callback. I didn't immediately pick that up. I had to get back to a friend of ours who was like, wait, what was this reaction? What am I missing? And he's like, no, he said that before at a certain point. I was like, oh, right, fuck, I already forget about that. It's been a while. But yeah, Eren knows that there's probably no way out of this except for killing the person who is still responsible for the war being waged on his people. Even if they have kept to themselves, Mali would have invaded again. So he knows that, kind of doesn't want to do that. But as we later learn, he also has a different agenda. And yeah, he transforms into a Titan, breaks out of the building, kills a bunch of civilians and children. So they're really going for the Last of Us 2 thing, trying to make our previous hero the villain of this new chapter in a way, or at least in the eye of the Marleyans. He's the ultimate evil, like he's the devil. That's what they call the people from Paradise. The devils from Paradise. Likewise, Gabi, one of our new characters, is the obvious new Eren on their side. Young, naive, fixated on achieving glory on the battlefield, and now hellbent for revenge because a friend of hers or a bunch of comrades of her get killed in Eren's attack. Again, it's very understandable because she sees two of her friends smashed and trampled right before our eyes. But we have kind of seen, and I'll get to that later, we have kind of seen this with Eren before. We know where this will lead. She is the new Proto-Eren. This is what will happen to her. She will become what he has become. She is already there, kind of. So
yeah, I was going to say it happened to Gabby a little quicker. It's so weird because you feel bad for her, and at the same time, you don't.
Yeah. It turns out Willie Tybur actually expected to be attacked and killed at the event and theater performance. Like he intended to offer himself and the top army brass up as bait, without knowing that, of course, aside from Commander Magath. But he wanted to present the world with the ultimate aggressor in the form of Eren to unite the world against Paradise and the aliens. Well, his plan worked, and now he's Attack Titan food.
Who would have known?
Yeah, so then it turns out his sister Laura is the Warhammer Titan, which is the weirdest Titan we've seen yet. Like, she uses hardening to cover her whole body with a defensive layer, but she can also create a variety of weapons with it. And she can steer her Titan remotely, somewhat. At least she doesn't have to be inside of her Titan body. She needs to be connected to it somehow by this kind of umbilical cord. And Eren figures that out pretty quickly. But yeah, it was very interesting. A very interesting, weird Titan, like completely different from what we've seen before. Kind of off-putting, to be honest, when I first saw it. I don't know how you felt about the Warhammer Titan. It was weird. It looked almost kind of metal-ish.
Yeah, we've had a lot of weird Titan designs up to this point, but something about that one just, I don't know, maybe because it seems more humanoid?
Yeah, maybe that's it. It doesn't look as bestial as
even the Attack Titan, which is probably one of the most humanoid ones we've seen up to. That's not true. There's the Colossal Titan and the Armor Titan as well, but
yeah, it looks very weird. But it's interesting. Cool power set, gotta say. And again, that's one of the scenes where the flaws of the CG come into play the most, because there are a few shots where the Attack Titan and where the Warhammer Titan are just standing kind of still moving only a bit back and forth, and then you have like this shuddering, choppy frame rate, and it doesn't look good. But when they actually fight, when they actually move a lot, it looks really great. So, yes, you can't have everything in this season, but still, it's decent. It was definitely all right, and I like that fight that then ensues. And right when she is about to take out Eren, the Scout Regiment and a bunch of familiar faces arrive. Just like Eren, they are aged up quite a bit. Mikasa has short hair. Connie finally has hair. And they're all using the rocket spears they used to beat Reiner in the 3rd season. And bolt guns that were used by Kenny's group before now. So they have upgraded their arsenal. And they also have these new suits that kind of look a bit like exoskeletons in a way. Only Armin hasn't appeared yet at that point, but we can guess that, well, he is the Colossal Titan now, so he's going to have a big entrance eventually. No doubt about it. Mikasa, apparently, which we learn immediately, was against Eren's plan. She's horrified by the destruction he raised on the city, and yeah, I mentioned it before with the Warhammer Titan, but I have to mention it again because now it's in my show notes here. The CG on the Titans at this point is very hit and miss when like I said, when the camera moves around them, like during Mikasa's or Levi's attack, they look very dynamic and cool. But focus the camera on them without moving, and you immediately notice the jaggy movement and low frame rate. Typical anime CG problems that only Orange manages to solve on a somewhat regular basis. The key here is to use 2D drawn models during fixed angles and the CG in the dynamic action shots, which Wit mostly did with the Colossal Titan, except for the 3rd season for some reason. But yeah, they used hand-drawn models on everything else, if I remember correctly. The way Mappa went about it was probably more cost-effective and less work, but it doesn't look as good in some parts. In some parts, it looks even better. In the Titan-on-Titan battles, when both Titans are CG now, it can look really cool, depending on how much the camera swerves around and everything. But when you have these still scenes, these still shots, then it becomes a problem. But yeah, it seems like Eren and the other Paradise soldiers quickly lose the element of surprise when Pieck, Galliard, and Zeke join the battle, which are the current Titan shifters. Pieck is the card Titan that rescued Zeke at the end of the 3rd season, with a weird-ass face, but she can carry basically different equipment. She seems to be the strategist of the Malayan Titan shifters, because she gives advice and commands to both Galliard and Zeke. She is especially dangerous when her support crew basically mans a tank equipment on her back and starts mowing down maneuver gear soldiers like flies. And like we mentioned before, Galliard has inherited Ymir's Jaw Titan, but is even stronger and more agile than her. And of course, Zeke in the Beast Titan is as much of a monster as ever. Then, however, finally, the last of our previous big three main characters, Armin, appears. Shifts into his new colossal Titan form he took from Berthold and lays the complete harbor to waste. Like an atom bomb. Yeah. That is... I mean, we always had that imagery from the Colossal Titan when it transformed, especially in Season 3. But here it's even more evident. You see a bunch of ships that see the harbor and you see basically an atom bomb drop in that harbor. And the horrifying detail in the atomic bomb-ass destruction he leaves behind is gruesome. It's terrifying. Not only to us, but also to him. Looking at the smoldering crater and all the dead bodies he left behind who are just melted into the ground, he says... Is this the sight you saw as well, Berthold? Which was, oof. It was a stunning scene. It was really well done. I was like, holy shit, yeah. I knew Armin wouldn't be fine with that. He is just,
Of course not, because he doesn't, that's not what he wants to do, but,
Yeah, exactly. They only do it to get Eren out of there.
Right.
Because they know they lose if they lose him. So it's like they didn't want to do this, but Eren forced their hand. Mikasa says as much, and I think Levi as well, and Hanji is also kind of pissed at him because of that, I think. But yeah, this and a bunch of surprise hits against the Marleyan Titans enable Mikasa and Eren to basically dismember and use Gallia's jaw to crack Laura's hardening shell open, smash her, and for Eren to drink up her mushed, bloody corpse to inherit the Warhammer Titan's powers as well. So he has now the power of the Attack Titan, the Founding Titan, I think. Or what Titan did Willy have? I don't remember. Whatever that he has that power. He has the War Titan power now. Oh, and Hanji arrives in a giant zeppelin to get Eren and the others out of there. That was also a striking image and interesting. Meanwhile, Falco, Gabi, and Magath look at this in complete unbelieving horror, but manage to call out for Reiner, who had already given up at this point and was ready to die. But his pupils seem to mean a lot to him, so he shifts into his Armored Titan form after all, and the battle takes a turn again. And this series of episodes is just incredibly riveting. From the surprise attack to the battle superiority shifting back and forth multiple times, you just have no idea what is going to happen next. And all of it is exciting, captivating, and, the horrifying imagery on display here is kind of mesmerizing in a way. And the Colossal Titan seems to be the only hand-drawn Titan in this episode, which is a weird flip compared to last season, because it was the only CG Titan there, but it looks really good. So, yeah, I just liked this set of episodes a lot. What did you think about the attack on the city?
It was like gripping. It was sobering as hell. Just seeing, this wild, this uncontrolled destruction, basically. Eren just bursting out of there, and then the scouts having to basically cover his ass, say, you need to get the hell out of there. But, Eren would have stayed there until, he had gotten killed if he had his way. Just to make his point, I feel like. But, man, from that first moment in the basement to the escape on the Zeppelin.
Yeah, and we're not done with the horrible surprises yet.
Yeah.
And this is where Gabi comes into play. I mean, she was featured kind of prominently from the get-go in this season. But yeah, like I said before, she is exactly the same as Eren was in the beginning. She's an indoctrinated idiot, kinda, so hell-bent on revenge that she would never be able to see the whole picture. This wouldn't be a problem, except for the fact we had to stomach that version of Eren for 2.5 seasons before he finally got to change. And having, to have such a character featured again in such a prominent role is tough to bear, especially since back then we were mostly watching the series through the standard shonen action scope, so we were willing to root for Eren and forgive his more annoying and stubborn character traits. However, I still understand it's necessary to get Isayama's never-ending circle of violence point across. And also, don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily begrudge Gabi for doing what she does. She's a child. She's naive, she's brainwashed, she's severely traumatized, and is acting on the idea which was hammered into her by the military apparatus and society, that what she is doing is just. She is fighting the devils of paradise, tooth and nails, to show everyone that aliens are actually good people. She's not even able to consider that the people mainly at fault here are those that forced her and her kind into this position of subjugation and self-hatred. And yeah, she manages to hitch a ride on the Zeppelin, smuggles herself on board, and then kills Sasha, one of the absolute fan favorites from the first season onwards. And that is very smart from a writing perspective, because it immediately lets us know how high the stakes are in this season. Like I said, Sasha was a fan favorite from the beginning. Like, everyone loves Sasha. And she was part of the main core of characters, and those have been surprisingly safe until now. But Gabi shooting her dead out of nowhere is not only shocking, but lets us know, guess what? Maybe nobody has plot armor anymore. It was really smart, but it was also really sad. And seeing, our characters reacting to her death and everything. And her just flat out dying. She doesn't have any grandiose goodbye speech or everything. She just dies. I think the one thing she says is meat.
Yeah.
like she would. I mean, that fits her character. Or potatoes or something. She could have said that.
Which is like, of course. Of course.
Yeah, it's a quick, dirty death. Just like, most deaths are in war, I guess. Unless you're shot somewhere where you suffer endlessly. But yeah, she just dies out of nowhere. And that's not something the show really... Well, the show has done that with minor characters where they're just eaten by titans suddenly. But at certain points, you could recognize your main characters. And when then some of the more important characters like Erwin dies, a big deal is made out of that. And okay, this character is probably going to die and stuff like that. But Gabi is just shooting her out of nowhere. And it's like, what the fuck? They killed Sasha? I don't believe it. This is crazy. And you immediately hate Gabi to no extent, I guess. But also, the show wants you to do that. Now you understand her side, but she also does despicable things to the characters you have come to know and love. But again, it's really hard to just outright completely hate her because you know where she is coming from and that's not really her fault. She has been made this way. And again, like I said, the show is trying to inflict very complicated feelings on you. But the characters are not as, let's say, subtly written as they are, again, in Last of Us 2. So it's easier to hate Gabi because she has been mostly shown as this very brash, very arrogant, very driven character that Eren was in the first season. The problem now is we have spent more time with Eren, I guess, and also the show has turned into something different tone-wise. So now seeing that character and, seeing her do what she does makes it easier to hate her. But then, again, that is probably our own fault. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see Isayama do what he does with that character and make her do something so horrible for us anyway, because she kills one of our favorite characters. So very smart, very well done. I know why he did it, and it worked. It did the trick. It showed us what is at stake here.
I thought Eren's reaction after the fact was... it's something like... He just starts laughing because, what were her final words? Meat. Oh, and, he starts laughing. And the idea is, of course, that's what it is. But then you can see him just like the rage just comes out instantly. And it's like, oh, yeah.
And he knows that he is partially responsible for this.
Right. Because, Jean even says as such to him.
Yeah. He forced their hands. He made this happen, this attack. And now Sasha's dead because of that. And Eren knows that, but he has made up his mind. He's willing to do everything to make his plan happen. We learn what his plan is later on in this season. Boy, well, maybe his plan. First of all, it's Zeke's plan. Speaking of Zeke, the surprises don't end because, as it turns out, Zeke is in on all of this.
Yep.
As is revealed in this part. He was conspiring with the Paradise Forces to bring more Titan powers under Eren's control because, as he says, his goal is to free all aliens from Malayan oppression. Though, at this point, we are not actually filled into how he really plans to do that. And he still tells us some bullshit for a while in regards to that. And so does Eren, really. And we'll get to that. So Eren acted alone and let himself taken hostage, so the scouts would arrive in full force to save him, and thus letting him accomplish his goal to wreak havoc and gain more Titan powers. And he forced their hand, and a lot of people lost their lives. Like already stated, at least Eren seems to be guilt-wrecked about Sasha, but again, he has made up his mind. He is gonna move forward with this. And there are still some surprises in store for our characters when it comes to that. One of the things I noticed, which is very prevalent in this show, and it jumps at you right from the beginning, every one of our three main characters looks so defeated and tired. Well, not only our main characters, but a lot of our main characters.
I say they've been fighting this war for how long now? Exactly.
We then move over to the paradise side of things, because that's where the characters retreat to make their new plans and everything, because Eren and Zeke obviously have one. And yeah, there are some new characters that are introduced. Yelena is an important one, and some other characters who are from countries Marley has conquered. So they are very intent on working with the Eldians against the Marleyans. That's what they say anyway. And we get some few side stories with one of those characters named Niccolo, who was into Sasha and Sasha's parents, and that's really sweet. I like that scene. And that was one of the scenes that felt good in this season, where it was some like, okay, this is a nice moment, even though it results from a very sad moment. The Eldian government still has trust issues, understandably so, and keeps Zeke and his lieutenants on a tight leash. No one can blame them for that. Levi really, really wants to kill Zeke. Can't blame him either.
Yeah.
Zeke is being kind of blasé about it, but even he starts feeling uncomfortable with Levi's glare on him, because if Levi can't do anything, it's a good glare. Armin is really wrestling with what they did, talking to Annie in her cocoon about it. Those are just some of the small scenes that happen in the next episode or episodes before we get more plot revelations and learn about the actual plan, which is ostensibly, at this point in the season, Zeke wants to use Eren's founding Titan powers, combine it with a Titan of royal blood, which they have now with the Warhammer Titan, and then start the rumbling. And the rumbling means awakening all the Titans sleeping in the walls of paradise, or Paradis. What is it, Paradis or Paradise? I think they pronounce it as Paradis, and in the subtitles it's Paradise, right?
Yeah, I had just assumed that it was Paradis, even though spelled. It's Paradise without the E on the end.
Yeah. Okay, let's say Paradis for, in regards to this. But yeah, what they want to do is with the rumbling is threatening the world with their power and thus forcing a pact of non-aggression, some form of peace. So basically not the complete pacifist route that Fritz went for, but more of the thing that Celestial Being did. It's like, you all behave, we're just going to keep the peace, otherwise if you don't behave, we're just going to annihilate you. So another analogy to atom bombs. Yeah. Basically. It's like, we have our hands on the trigger, so we don't want any war. We're just going to live our peaceful lives here on our fucking island. You leave us alone, and all's going to be fine. But if you don't, we're just going to throw fucking atom bombs in the form of Titans at you. Because we have a lot of those in our walls. The analogies to certain war instruments in our actual lives have never been as on the nose. Well, okay, the Colossal Titan literally causing atom bomb-shaped explosion is even more on the nose, but you get my point.
Well, let's not forget within the first couple episodes, we have literal dive-bombing Titans.
True, yeah. Yeah, like I said, Attack on Titan is not a subtle show.
No.
It never was. It tackles a lot of interesting themes, but not necessarily in a subtle way. But yeah, the show is now jumping back and forth between specific points in time, which can be a bit confusing. You can usually tell by the haircuts and mood if the current scene is set in the past or the present, but it's always a moment of, wait, where are we now? It felt a bit disjointed. I think it was only one episode, but it was like, okay, I know we're trying to catch up on certain things that happened and how we got to this point, but it was like we're missing a bit of filling material here. It's just like, well, okay, are we present? What is happening when? So that there probably was a more elegant storytelling version of this that could have been created, but maybe not. I don't know how it's handled in the manga. But in the anime, it's a bit confusing at this point in the season.
Sure, in the manga, it was probably like they divided it up into, I imagine, its own set of pages or its own chapter just to make it easier to follow.
Yeah, maybe. We also learned that Historia became pregnant to not being forced to become a Titan shifter. Did Eren tell her to do it? I think he did, right? Because he had a different plan in mind and didn't want her to be involved in that.
Yeah, I think
and wanted
so.
to shoulder the whole pain, the whole pressure, and so on. At least it feels like it. That's why he enacted his plan to invade or basically go undercover and infiltrate Marley and force the hands of the Scout Regiment and so on. Feels like that was part of his plan. And yeah, one of the funny things is Paradis needs to learn diplomacy. Comes into contact with a bunch of different nations who kind of want to ally themselves with them against Marley, because Marley is in the process of conquering them and stuff. And one of the countries is Hizuru. This is a analogy to Japan, I guess.
I would say totally not Japan.
Totally not Japan. And Mikasa turns out to be the heir to their throne, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't know if all the Ackerman people are in a way, or are of royal Hizuru bloodline, but at least Mikasa is. That's a small tidbit of story that really doesn't lead to anything aside of at least giving Mikasa some agency in some parts and some development to her character and her background, which she hasn't really gotten any of in the previous seasons. Like, Mikasa is this... She's just a muscle, and her only existence is that of being friends with Armin and Eren in like the first 3 seasons. Aside from that, she doesn't really have any agency. And this gives her a bit more meat to her character. But aside from that, we'll get to it, but doesn't really lead to much, aside from showing that there is all the different countries are also following their own agendas and everything and have their own plans and plots and shit. So I don't know if that needed to be in here, but it's to drive the point home, I guess, that each country has a different thing, a different stake in this war. There's a sweet flashback scene, bittersweet, from a train car. Hey, Paradis built a train. Especially Connie and Sasha arguing over who is dumber. This was really nice. But, these are all also the diplomacy stuff. These are all scenes from the past. What eventually will happen to Sasha. So it's bittersweet, like I said. And going back to the present, we see that Eren's actions have jammed a wedge between him and his friends. Mikasa and Armin are still loyal to a fault, but Jan and Hanji are worried, and Connie is downright furious because he holds Eren partially responsible for Sasha's death. Rightfully so, I guess. So this tight-knit group that we had from the get-go is in the process of being splintered by what Eren did. And again, that's probably also one of the things that maybe pissed people off, because you had like this very tight comradeship from the beginning, the Scout Regiment and everything, and now that is breaking up because of what one of the characters is doing. Like I said, we get some views on that, and then we switch over to Gabi and Falco again, who have been captured and are being held prisoner. And we get more insight into how Gabi's mind works. Like, she has been so thoroughly indoctrinated into the Malayan propaganda machine her entire life that the mere thought of Paradis aliens being normal people is unthinkable to her. Accepting that truth would mean her entire life and raison d'etre would be a lie, which it is. So it's very hard to even let that thought into her head. She has lost almost anything but her convictions, so that is what she is clinging to at all costs. Even when one of the people she and Falco meet after they flee, Kaya, confronts her about why her mother had to die due to the Malayan advanced attack by Reiner and his gang, she barely seems to budge. It's just like, of course she had to die because she was a devil.
Right.
So this is terrifying to see. Just to see her just completely not being able to formulate her own thoughts. The theme Isayama is going for here is a tough one, because it's about letting go of the past and forgiving sins, or at least not letting people suffer by proxy for sins their ancestors committed. Which in itself is a very good message. Yeah, you should do that. You should try to strive for peace. You should try to strive for forgiveness. You should try to let past things be past things and not stay in the cycle of violence, in the cycles of hatred and eye for an eye thing. So in itself, that message is good. That message is valid and is something we should adapt in real life. Absolutely.
Except trying to actually live up to that.
First that, and also how you go about it.
Yeah.
And as someone who hails from a country that has committed one of the biggest atrocities in human history, I can't deny that this hits home hard, at least in a certain way. I obviously agree that people should not be killed for what their parents or grandparents did. But also, I'm a bit worried that Isayama is trying to say that maybe one should just forget that these sins ever happened to start over, which I definitely don't agree with at all. Because that's exactly the tone a lot of right-wing neo-Nazi groups and a certain political party in my country currently is hitting. To quote some of these people, why do we have to be constantly reminded of and ridiculed for the shit our ancestors did in World War II and such? Of course, the ugly little brother to that kind of statement is, I mean, stuff like the Holocaust never happened anyway. Of course, I'm not saying that this is what Isayama wants to express, not at all. But considering how bad Japan is, or at least more right-wing nationalist people in Japan are with accepting the atrocities they committed in World War II, I mean, Nanking Massacre, anyone? This kind of tone is a bit too familiar, manipulative, and dishonest for my taste. So I'm really interested to see what Isayama ultimately will come down on here. Forgive is good. Forget definitely is not.
I mean, like they say, those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it.
Exactly. So the problem is in that scene with Kaya and her mother, and the way Gabi reacts to it, the way Falco reacts to it, it's like hammered home. Hey, why do I have to suffer? This is repeated several times in the show, even in the earliest. Why do I have to suffer for the sins my parents committed? Can we just forget about everything that happened before this? You can forgive. Don't forget. Don't forget the things your parents, the horrors your parents did, your ancestors did, so you don't repeat them. Like you said. I wonder. I don't think this is what Isayama is ultimately going to say. He's just going to try to hammer home, we need to forgive each other. We need to break out of the circle of violence. Otherwise, it's only going to lead to more misery. And that is something I wholeheartedly subscribe to. That's something I can totally agree with. If there is something in there that's like, to do that, we have to forget our past. And something at the end of the season is kind of, again, going into that direction. Or at least kind of like erasing the past. That's not something I can accept. And I really hope the show is not ultimately going there and making that its final statement. I really hope it's not. So, yeah, Kaya is helping Falco and Gabi escape. The ironic thing is, Kaya is the little girl that got saved by Sasha in, was it the second season? I think so. When Sasha went on that solo mission. And yeah, now she's helping her murderer escape. That is, wow.
Yeah.
It was one of those, if you only know, and we'll get to that. She later learns about that shit. So yeah, that results in some fallout. But still, at this point, it's like, oh, if you only knew. But yeah, there is a scene that's later then called back to where Mikasa's parents were murdered. Were they murdered? I don't remember. And did Eren actually kill the murderers of Mikasa's parents? Or did she that herself? I don't remember. That I think that was shown in the first season. And I think they call back to that later in this season where it's like Mikasa is protecting someone. But that was one of the questions where it's like, okay, wait, what did happen again? I should have watched all seasons before watching this again. Another thing that I noticed, Hitch is one of the character designs that is barely recognizable when compared to the Wit version. She had like this snarky, sarcastic face on her, and now she looks completely different. That was weird. I was like, wait, this is Hitch? The character we met in the third season, who switched over to the Scout Regiment side and everything. That was really weird.
Yeah, that was...
I don't know what happened there. Is this supposed to be because of the time gap, because of the 4 years, and now she looks completely different? Or was that just a weird change in character design? I don't know.
I mean,
strange.
Looking at it from the manga, yeah, she did change her hair, but, it wasn't like a complete redesign.
But in the show, it kind of is. Like, I did not recognize her. It was really weird. Continue with the plot. We still got a bit to go. Eren gets freed by a splinter group of the Eldian military, which after the fact is coined the Jaegerists. Flock being one of them, the guy who gave Eren a lot of shit at the end of season 3. But now he seems to want to help Eren. He is the guy who says, we need Eren. He is the monster we need to give our people freedom. So he is willing to help him. He's like, no, I'm just gonna do everything Eren says because he is the only one with a clear head. He's the only one with the right plan. So that was a bit of a surprise. But yeah, he's now in cahoots with Eren and they have their own plan, apparently. And the Jaegerists kill Premier Zachary and force Pixis into a position where he has to negotiate with them. Eren says he wants to meet with Zeke and Historia to... At this point, we don't know to do what exactly, but we learn a couple of episodes later. Then we have a confrontation in the headquarters, like this dinner place. And Niccolo, who was one of the adopted Marlens, I guess, from the other countries, who switched over to the party side of things. Like John said, there are a lot of different shifting allegiances and parties here to keep track of. So you are forgiven if you don't remember from our review what characters are and what their agencies are. But he was into Sasha. He was very much falling in love with her and everything because she really liked his food. And he was a nice person overall. But he was one of the characters who was really not fond of aliens in the beginning. He was really like taking a stance, fuck these devils and everything. But then spending time with Sasha, he really grown to understand them and learned to care about them, especially learned to care about Sasha. So her death by the hands of Gabi is just completely...
It just undoes him.
It undoes him and just ravages him. And once he learns that Gabi was responsible for that, he gets completely angry and has this outburst, which still isn't enough to make Gabi consider her actions. Only Sasha's father not killing her and Kaya suddenly trying to, which she didn't want to do. And she was like this one person that was willing to accept Gabi and Falco, even though she was pretty sure or knew that they were Marleyans. Yeah, it seems it's finally hitting the right nerve with Gabi because, the father of the person she killed not wanting to kill her and the one person that was completely nice to her and that connected to her, so suddenly deciding to kill her. That finally gets her out of her, wait, did I do something wrong? Are these people actually not monsters? At least you see a beginning here.
Yeah.
You see the beginning of the thought process. It doesn't mean that she's actually going to go there because they walk that back a bit after a while. We'll see what happens in the final set of episodes next year. But still, it's like she at least considers it at this point. She is at least shocked that this is happening. And she is confused. And Falco gets hurt because of her and everything. So... But again, she might be too far gone after all, and considering she meets Eren right after that, it probably makes her forget everything else. So, Mr. Browse, so the father of Sasha in this particular episode, is using the woods or the forest as an analogy for cruelty of the real world, and they shouldn't let kids wander into it too early, and that the burden should instead be shouldered by the older people. It's noble, but depending on the interpretation, it could also mean to keep the truth from the younger generation so they can get past their history, which has the bad aftertaste of forget I was talking about earlier. So when that came up, when it's like, hey, don't let the kids wander into the woods because it will crush them and so on. And like, okay, is this about not making them part of the war effort? Which, yeah, of course, don't do that and don't let them suffer for it. Or is that... No, don't tell them the whole history because then they are bound to suffer because of their ancestors' sins. Again, which I'm like, this is, you have to know your history, or you will repeat it if it was bad. God damn it, show. What are you going for? Mr. Browse himself is definitely about forgiveness, though, so at least that much is clear for now in terms of one of Isayama's intended main themes. So I'm still, at this point, still willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, okay, we'll see where you go with this. And yeah, what also happens in this, which is, oof. It turns out Zeke had a secret plan after all. Have all the high-ranking military officers drink wine that is mixed with his spinal fluid. Gross. Even the thought. That will ultimately turn them into titans once he wills it, because he has that ability, and brings them under his control. Falco also by accident drinks off the wine. So that happens.
He drinks a lot of it.
Yeah. And Eren sits down with his former best friends and Gabi. His hand already cut, so he could turn into a Titan in the blink of an eye. A powerful threat, which makes that scene incredibly tense from the get-go. Again, the show is very good at building up tense scenes just by giving you certain visual cues. And yeah, then something horrible happens because Eren is laying into his former friends, insulting them. He says Armin is visiting Annie because Bertolt has taken over his brain. He says he hates Mikasa because she and all the Ackermans are slaves that are programmed to protect the royal family at all costs. So he considers her not a real friend. He considers her just a puppet. And it's horrifying. Him just laying into his former friends, Mikasa verbally and Armin with his fists, is just hard to watch. Those three were the unbreakable core of the show. Heart, soul, and will. I don't even think Eren really believes what he's saying. And that's what you said earlier. It's like, I think he's making himself the bad guy here for a specific reason. And, trying to get them angry and force them to reveal where Zeke is as well. And regardless, it's a cruel scene and makes you hate Eren more than his diehard stubborn dumbass or whiny version ever could from, past times. But yeah, it's very much the Dark Knight principle. You die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain.
Well.
Yeah. So Eren really is going for that here. And when Armin throws a punch at him, Mikasa is automatically protecting him, which lends power to his words, to, Eren's word that she's just a puppet because of her Ackerman blood. But also it might just be because she has protected Eren out of love for him all his life. It's not just because she's a puppet, but it makes her question herself. And it makes Armin question herself. It's just like Eren knows what he needs to say to his former friends to make them falter and make them question themselves. So he just pushes those buttons. He pushes them very intentionally. And that makes me think that you are right with your assumption that he does that for a specific reason. And the reason is to make himself look bad, make himself out to be the villain, and him the focus of blame and hatred to eventually break the cycle of violence. Maybe. This is kind of the thing that Lelouch did in Code Geass. Or exactly what Lelouch did. He made himself to be the ruler at the end, the guy who was responsible for everything. And then, spoilers for Code Geass, which is an old show, so fuck it. Then he let himself get killed by, what was the other main character of that show? Suzaku. So he could be the ultimate hero and the world could heal from that now that all the true villains are dead and could start over. Which could be the thing that Eren is going for. We don't know that yet. All we know is he immediately gets into their heads and makes them doubt themselves. So
it's so weird, that scene, though, to me, because I know we said that Eren is trying to make Mikasa out to be a puppet. More like, to me, the way she just automatically jumps in front of Armin, it's more robotic to me than puppetry. It's just so strange.
But she's always done that.
Yeah.
She's always just, in the blink of an eye, has everything done to protect Eren. And Armin, too. It's just like, this is the first time Armin is the one being a threat to Eren. So her protecting one friend of hers, but at the same time hurting another friend of hers, is completely, it's derailing her at that point. You see that in her face. It's like, no, wait, this is... Am I a puppet? Am I a robot? Am I just a slave to my genetic code, my upbringing, whatever?
As it turns out, maybe.
Yeah. We'll see about that. Switching over to Levi for a bit, who holds Zeke prisoner in a forest somewhere, close to the city, I guess. He decides to dispose of Zeke by having someone loyal to him eat Zeke because he's just fed up with him and he is not feeling good about the whole situation. And there's communication trouble apparently with the headquarters and everything, because of the shit the Jaegers are doing. So he's like, no, this doesn't feel good. So I'm just going to kill Zeke now, let him eat, and someone who is on our side is going to eat him and take his Titan powers, and we'll go on from there. A bit too late though. Zeke escapes, which is a funny scene, honestly. Whereas Levi is just looking in one direction and looking back, and Zeke is just taken to the fucking woods. It's just like, just running ahead. And Levi is just like, wait, what? What the fuck?
Just to me, like, huh?
But yeah, Zeke has a plan, turns all of Levi's soldiers into Titans because they also drank the spinal fluid wine, as it turns out. unknowingly because Levi let them, because it's like, hey, this is good Malayan wine. We never get to drink this. Let us drink this, boss. And Levi said, sure, fine, go ahead. I mean, he couldn't have known that there was the spinal fluid in there.
Boy, it's a good thing you didn't drink any yourself, huh, Levi?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To keep a clear head. Thank God. And yet again, Zeke underestimates how driven and cold-blooded Levi is, who immediately catches up to him, by killing all of his former comrades first, who have turned into Titans, like all of them apparently, catches up to Zeke, blows him up, and cuts him to pieces.
Yeah, it's fucking brutal.
Absolutely. Just chopping pieces of his feet off, just bit by bit. He's not done with him yet, though. Takes him hostage, literally jams an exploding spear into his chest to keep him from moving. And again, like I said, cuts off his feet. But also him just blowing him out of his Titan form with the spears, which is a sight to behold. It's a very quick and dirty fight, but it looks really cool. Aside from that one shot from, the bottom shot where you look up at the Beast Titan and then you have the choppy frame rate again because it's CG at that point. But aside from that, it looks really good. Flock, meanwhile, tries to convince more cadets to join the ranks of the Jaegeris. He lets Hanji, who he has taken prisoner, see them beat up Shadis, the drill instructor, who has also trained pretty much everyone, also Eren and his friends, probably as a demonstration of power and to show her that there is no point in resisting and that she better tell them where Zeke is right now. Otherwise, I don't really know why he takes her with him to that display of savagery. I have no idea. But he definitely relishes in it. Then in the next episode, after Zeke has been captured and severely dismembered, we finally see past events from his perspective, which we haven't got yet, which makes Grisha Yeager look like even more of a driven asshole. The show actually manages to make you feel a bit sorry for Zeke in that moment. Maybe they could have stretched it out a bit more because it's handled very quickly. We learned that he was caught between the pressure and expectations put on him by his grandparents, his parents, and the military, and decided to adopt Xaver, the former Beast Titan shifter, as his surrogate dad. And his conclusion to all the madness and hate he has witnessed by his young mind being ground into dust between the different factions is that the best thing, and here is the final plan, people, the best thing for Eldians would be to have never been born into this cruel world. So, he plans to use the founding Titan to make all Eldians sterile and never bear children again. He calls it the euthanization plan. And Eren agrees with his plan, and thus this new horrifying alliance was created. Okay.
It's a lot to do again.
Yeah. So, of course, that plan is not the solution.
No!
It can't be. I mean, yes, it's a way to break the endless cycle of violence, hatred, and revenge. Yeah, if your solution to that is fucking genocide, albeit an indirect one, you have taken a few too many wrong turns, buddy. That is some hardcore megalo-Nazi shit, even if, in a weird, twisted way, you're doing it to spare your people from further harm. But yeah, if this is what the Polygon article, which I haven't read yet, is alluding to, I can see it. Because this is exactly what the Nazis tried to do. They tried to eradicate the Jewish people also by those methods. Making them sterile so they couldn't procreate anymore, so they couldn't bear any children anymore. To eradicate them from the face of the earth. And, the same people are wearing armbands here, and the same people are being mistreated in this show. And now people from their own ranks are saying, yeah, the best thing would be if we didn't exist anymore, because we are the cause of all the hatred. With us existing, the hatred will never end, the violence will never end. So we need to die. Our race needs to die out. And if that is the final statement of this show, if that is the fucking exclamation mark at the end of Attack on Titan, that a race that has caused, because of their existence, a lot of harm, even though there are good people in there, normal people in there, who probably want to keep having children, who probably want to continue existing. If this is the exclamation mark, if that's the thing Isayama wants to say, then I wholeheartedly regret watching Attack on Titan for the past years. Because that would be fucking horrible. That would be disgusting.
I hope that's not the point that we come to at the end of the show.
Well, it's what our main character apparently is subscribing to doing right now, unless
again he's pulling, them in the other direction to make him. We don't know what the fuck is going through Aaron's head at this point anymore.
That is the question. Yeah, he is the big enigma now. Where before this, we clearly knew what he was about. He is the biggest mystery this show. Like, he has become the mystery box. That while the plot itself before was the mystery box in the previous season, now it's this character. What is Eren thinking? What is his ultimate goal? Is he really... Did he just say what he said to gain Zeke's allegiance? Because he knew he needed his power, because he knew he needed his tools. He needed the guy in the military, in the Malian military, to help him to gain the power he has now. Because he might have a different plan again for himself. I hope he does. I hope ultimately he will find a different way. He will say no.
No, maybe fuck you, actually.
Yeah. That's the question. What is he going to do? What is he going to do with the founding Titan powers? Is he going to just do what they initially said, him and Zeke? We're just going to cause the rumbling, and we're going to say, okay, we're going to stay in peace here. All the aliens retreat to party, and you leave us alone. We have our own land. You have yours. Maybe that's as good as it will get. It's still better than being like, hey, I guess we gotta annihilate, we gotta erase this entire race from the face of the earth to break the cycle of violence and hatred.
Insert a picture of that one meme of the old man going, guess I'll just die.
Yeah.
Like, fucking...
What? Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a fucking lot what is thrown at us at the tail end of the season. And I still don't know how to feel about it, especially if this is the final consensus by the end of the show, which we still have some episodes to go, probably. I don't know, 8 or 10, I assume. That's what's the final season will have next year.
I looked it up. Where we left off was chapter 116, and there's like 20-something chapters after that. So, because towards the end of the season, it seemed like the pace slowed down.
Yeah, it was very fast in the beginning, and then it slowed down just for the... we had some reveals, big reveals, one after another, but the gears were moving kind of slowly, because it took a long time for Eren to actually be on his way, and Zeke escaping and shit like that. And now they actually have to meet. We'll see how that turns out. And Historia apparently will be involved in that as well, I guess. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, then we got to the end of this season, and we had what a couple of our friends referred to as the point, where Peak basically turns around to Eren and says, no, you are the enemy. Which she ain't wrong at this point.
Yeah, they make it out to be like she is trying to join forces with him at some point. Where it's like, hey, I want to free our people too. I only joined the army because my dad is of bad health and to have the money to help him with that, right? And stuff like that. But deep down, I subscribe to your ideals. At that point, we know she doesn't know Eren's full plan.
Yeah.
It's like that, maybe his full plan, or at least Zeke's full plan. We know that is actually what Zeke wants to do. We don't know if that is actually what Eren wants to do yet. But yeah, she subscribes to the plan that Eren wants to use the rumbling and so on, which she's aware of. But ultimately, no, she doesn't. She just uses that to free Gabi and stall.
Right.
She's stalling for Galliard and Reiner to arrive. And now the stage for the final confrontation is set. Eren transforms into the Attack Titan. And
now everybody knows where he is. So whoops, you gave yourself up, kinda. So
it's going to be a rush for Eren to get to Zeke, to have the final power on his hands and everything. And Zeke is willing to sacrifice himself and preventing the opposing side to inherit his Beast Titan. So he blows himself up, but is saved by a Titan who puts him in its belly like a reverse birth. Ew.
Yeah, that was...
fucking weird scene, dude. but yeah, so that happens, and I assume Eren is just going to try to escape the attacking forces now and meet up with Zeke and possibly Astoria for some reason. And that's where we left off at the season. It's just this shot of Eren facing the Zeppelins, rolling in from the sky with Reiner at the helm and being like, yeah, final duel between us two. And yeah, that's Attack on Titan, the final season, part 1, I guess. And yeah, I still wonder what Isayama's ultimate resolution to all this will be. In fact, I'm even more excited than I ever was, I think. Just from the thematic perspective. I mean, before that, it was just like, oh, what's behind all of this? What's behind all of this? And now I'm like, what are you actually going to try to say here? What is your ultimate message here? And I'm very worried. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, it could go in some... the direction it could go in.
Exactly. If he paints Zeke's and Aaron's current plan as anything but misguided and despicable by the end, I will be severely appalled. Like I said, like you said, hey, probably Aaron has his own goal in mind, and he's probably gonna one-up Zeke again.
I find it hard to believe that he doesn't. Because the Aaron of the past is a very different Aaron than he is now. He's revealed himself to be very conniving. Mm-hmm. So
yes, exactly.
He's got to have something.
Yeah, he might. The question is, what is the resolution that he actually came to? What is his idea? I don't want to believe it's that he wants to get rid of his people. I don't believe that. And maybe he doesn't want to get rid of the Malians either. I still want to root for Aaron. I still want to think like, hey, yeah, his methods was shit, and he's gonna die at the end of this.
Oh, without a doubt.
Either way, he's so dead. Like he's gonna die. He's gonna because he has committed so many atrocities in the name of his goal and of his plan. He's gonna die, and like you said, he's probably gonna make himself out to be the ultimate villain. He's gonna shoulder all the blame, and he's gonna do something that makes his death probably solve all of this, at least for the time being. Maybe he steals the Titan powers from the aliens or stuff like that. But also, that would be problematic as well, because that is part of their race. That is part of their history. They are Titan shifters. They have this power. So getting rid of it would mean getting rid of parts of themselves. That can also not be the solution, I think. So we'll see what he actually does. Maybe he gives everyone Titans powers. That could be a solution. I don't fucking know.
Oh, that seems like a bad solution, too.
That seems also like a super bad solution. I don't fucking know. That's the thing. I don't have the brains to find a way out of this. For me, the rumbling strategy seems to be the most valid one. The closest to what we actually do in our real lives. Yeah. You know, what we did in real history. Which is also... definitely not perfect.
It's still pretty fucked up.
Yeah, it's very fucked up. And it probably will lead to a third wall and global nuclear annihilation of the human race at some point. It probably will.
I mean, we were already standing on the doorstep of World War III not that long ago, I honestly feel like.
Yeah, so... like I said, I don't have the brains to find a solution to the conflict staged in Attack on Titan final season. Like, that makes every party happy, or that guarantees a consistent peace with all the grudges, with all the history that is in that conflict. I don't know what I would do if I was in Aaron's shoes. I have no idea. I can't. So I wonder if Isayama has the brains. I wonder what his solution to all of this will be. It's super tough, but there's a better solution than being like, hey, yeah, the best idea is to wipe a race of people from the face of the earth. So I hope that's not it. I'm still willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, especially, you know, there's still characters like John and Armin who make sense. You know, there's the scene where Armin is like, oh, this is such a beautiful plan, when Yelena tells him he's obviously bullshitting. He's trying to connect to her to maybe let her drop down her defenses and everything, but Armin is too smart for that. That was so phony to me. It was like... oh my god, why did you not tell us you had this noble plan? Or like, what the fuck are you saying? That's not Armin. That's not, I can't believe that. So he's gonna just say that so she thinks he's on her side.
One of those, this you moments.
And John, in general, is like, hey, what? None of this will work. He's immediately the guy. I always liked John, but I've grown to like him a lot in the past seasons. And especially in this one, where it's like, he's the ultimate voice of reason and all of this. It's weird. It's super weird. He's the only one who seems like maybe they should let him decide what the best plan of action would be. but he's like, at some point we will be stuck with only old people who cannot defend us if Marley attempts to attack us again. So what the fuck? What are you doing? And I'm like, yeah, he got it. And Yelena's response to that is kind of only like this lukewarm thing where it's like, yeah, but that probably won't work either. So it's weird, and we'll see. Well, I can't wait to see this wrap up and finally be able to determine if this is an anime series for the ages and one of my all-time favorites, or if it ultimately falters, stumbles, falls, and crumbles under its own ambition. I'm really looking forward to finding out with all of you come next year, especially with you, John. I can't. This is riveting. This is riveting. I did not expect the final season to give me so much more food for thought and get me hyped up even more to just find out where it's going to end up, what the final conclusion to this story will be. At the end of season 3, I was like, man, all the mysteries have been solved. What else can the show give us? Turns out a lot. A fucking lot. So my final verdict on this season of Attack on Titan is I loved it. I thought it was fucking great. I'm very worried it will turn into a horrible, disgusting thing by the time it finally wraps up next year.
Yeah.
But I want to believe it doesn't. I want to believe it's going for a good message. It's going for a good thing, even, if it's not all the way thought through and is more idealistic than anything else. I can deal with that. I just hope it doesn't go for the despicable shit. But this season was fun is not the right word, but it was riveting. It was thrilling.
It was a ride.
It was a ride. It was entertaining. It was a pure roller coaster from beginning to end. It had me on the edge of my seat. It had me cry because of Sasha, of course.
Oh, yeah.
It had me super angry at certain characters. It gave me so many surprises. It was amazing.
Can I say before we get to the end, fuck Floke. Just forever and ever. I hated him before. I want to see him get what he deserves.
He's kind of like, he's kind of, I don't know, indoctrinated from the other side of things, right? He's kind of, Gabi is also Eren, I guess, but Flock is also Gabi in a way, because he has lived that dedicate your hearts morale and message his entire life. And seeing all his comrades dying and everything at the end of season 3 completely broke him. You can see that. And now the thing he clings to is Eren making sense of all of this for him. I can understand where he's coming from. He's still an asshole, and he takes way too much pleasure in all of this.
That fucking smile.
Yeah.
You know the one.
Yeah, I know the one.
It's just,
he's a snide asshole.
When he had that look on his face, I was just like, oh.
Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, Flock is an asshole, but Eren can make use of an asshole, I guess. And you know where Flock is coming from. That doesn't mean you have to like him, but you can partially understand him.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. That's the thing about the show. That's the thing about what it does in this final season. You feel bad because there are a lot of shitty characters in here that you want to hate, but you also kind of understand why they are the way they are, and that it's not necessarily entirely their fault, if at all. And that makes it feel so much more depressing and horrible and worse, and that's what war is. So, I think the show is incredibly thorough and consistent in at least bringing across those themes. The remaining question is, what will it do with its final message, how to overcome all of this garbage? Is there one? Or is it going to stay completely ambiguous and be like, we don't know. I don't know. Maybe Isayama's final statement in this show equates to a giant shrug. Who knows? Let's find out together, everyone.
Could you fucking imagine?
Imagine we see, I don't know, the final confrontation or something, then it stops, it switches scenes, suddenly it's live action, it's Isayama on screen and he's just shrugging his shoulders. Or Eren posing the expression, how do we get out of this? And then we get the live actions.
Fucking hell.
Oh my god, people would riot in the streets. I would be one of them, probably.
Just a shot of Isayama at his art desk and being like, and then just going on with his day.
Yeah, exactly. Just drinking tea or something, taking a long zip, so... and everyone is sitting in front of the screen is like, what the fuck? What was this? Oh, people would be so fucking mad. I would kind of celebrate it. I would probably write him an email. It's like, good job. I don't fucking know. This is ludicrous. Anyway, we'll see what actually will happen if any of our predictions come true. Like I said, I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually super pissed that it's gonna be another year. That's right? Winter, they said winter season or something. When is the second part gonna hit?
Yeah, I mean, this show was also quote unquote, or this series was also quote unquote winter, but it started late December. So who the fuck knows? I mean,
yeah.
Mappa's workload is super obscene and obtuse, and they're just nothing but outsourcing anymore anyway. I'm sure you will link to that Canapa Effect video.
I will, yes. Please check out that video by Canapa Effect in the episode description, and I will put some other good videos on there. So definitely check this out if you don't always, but definitely this time. It's really interesting insight into Studio Mappa. Of course, they got a lot of big stuff on their hand. I assume a new season of Jujutsu Kaisen is already in the works, probably. They got Chainsaw Man. Yeah, there's a movie. They got Chainsaw Man, which is a highly anticipated series by me especially, because I've heard only good things about it so far, and looking forward to checking that out, and I'm happy that Mappa handles it. So they got their hands full. So I hope they will be able to give this so far amazing series with that one giant-ass caveat the ending it deserves. And I hope it goes out with a bang and not with a horrifying, disgusting whimper. We'll see. If you want to catch up, if you for some reason haven't checked out Attack on Titan yet, why are you listening to this? What the fuck? You can watch it on Crunchyroll in the US and on Funimation if you want to watch it up, I think. Is that correct?
Yes.
And on Wakanim in Germany, and a bunch of different services. Holy shit, Attack on Titan is everywhere.
Looks like it's also on Hulu here in the US, and then internationally it's on Anime Lab, Netflix, depending on where you live. So
yeah, Yahoo in Taiwan apparently, and Amazon Prime in Japan apparently. What?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, weird. It's everywhere. So you will be able to find it and watch it, and please do so. Either to be amazed once the show wraps up next year or be appalled, depending on what that show ends up doing with its final set of episodes. But yeah, I'm hyped, John. I can't wait for this to be over in the best sense possible, and maybe also the worst sense. I assume you feel the same.
It's this equal parts dread and excitement.
Yes,
so weird.
Yes, it's this horrible mix of excitement and dread, like you said. It's I can't wait. I hope the rest of this year goes by fast for more than one reason. And then we get to see the conclusion to all of this. Join us in our efforts. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this first part of the final season as much as we did. I can see if you don't. Actually, I have a friend who dropped out of reading the manga when that part of the story hit, because he was like, no, what the fuck is this? I don't agree with him. I think the series is as strong as ever, if not the strongest it has ever been, just in terms of story and theme. The question is where it will end up. And if it does the wrong thing, it will ruin the entirety of the series for me. That's the thing. There are a lot of stakes. The stakes have never been higher. So we'll see. Will this be a great Pretender effect, or will this be one of my all-time classics and I will watch it again and again and again and again? We'll see. Come next year. Until then, let's all be hopeful, because we definitely need it. And that is a wrap on the 112th episode of Anime Brain Freeze. All the music in our show is from the Double Dragon Neon soundtrack by the amazing Jake Kaufman. Please go to virt.bandcamp.com and check out his awesome work. Our show is available on most of the popular podcast services, but it's always worth visiting animebrainfreeze.com for our review index and more. Leave us comments and questions on YouTube, follow us on Twitter at AnyBrainFreeze, or send an email to animebrainfreeze@gmail.com. We would love to read your feedback. Thanks for tuning in, we hope you had a good time, and please join us again on our next episode. Macht's gut!
Take care, everybody.
Next time on Anime Brain Freeze.
The continuation of a wayward tale of swords and sorcery.
And a very human monster squad.